Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Today it's time to talk about quite possibly my favorite game of all time, Dissidia NT. Now I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of opinions about this game, some good, some bad, but one thing that's been consistently missing when it comes to this game is educational content. How the hell do you play the actual game? Today, I'm here to remedy that. But before we get started, please, a quick disclaimer.
By watching this video you agree that you are here to learn and celebrate Dissidia NT in good faith, and that you will not leave head-ass comments like 3v3 was a mistake or why did they nerf Tifa's jiggle physics. While it's understandable you may have gripes with the game and its outcome, let's not impede others' interest in learning the game. TLDR, don't leave brain dead comments.
One of the sole purposes of this guide is to help new players get into the game, and for any veteran players, maybe give you a tip or two to kind of up your game just a bit. So let's kick this thing off. What is Dissidia NT? Dissidia NT is a 3v3 arena fighting game. So if you've ever played any of the Ninja Storm series, it's somewhat akin to that, as well as the Almighty Gundam Versus series. It has a lot of overlap with things like that. So what this means in a nutshell is, as opposed to having a static background to fight in front of, the stage is very much a living element in every single round. Your ability to maneuver around the terrain and adapt to each specific locale will really make or break how your performance is in this game. So the basic idea when it comes to Dissidia NT is that each team is given 3 stocks, and it's your responsibility to take out the opposing team stocks while making sure that all 3 of your stocks are not depleted. Very straightforward, not unlike Smash Brothers. That's probably one of the games that has the most similarities overlap when it comes to Dissidia NT, which we'll touch on here in a moment. Now, before we go any further, I would like to highlight that the tutorial for this game is actually quite good. For just a purely beginner standpoint, it actually teaches you quite a bit. What I'm saying is that the training mode is really good. It has a ton of great content here. This video is to be used as supplementary material to that for sure. So I want to talk about the platforms of the game. Dissidia NT is available on 2 different platforms, PS4 and PC. So PS4 is a port of the arcade version that they had in Japan. It is pretty bad. It is quite dreadful in my opinion. I tried to go back and play it maybe 2 weeks ago and I wanted to end it. Like, for real, it was really pretty bad. The issue is that the base PS4 really isn't strong enough to play the game properly. There's a lot of like slowdowns when it comes to summons, specific stages. Things like Midgar, Academia are really bad. Certain summon animations will cripple the entire system. It's a bit better on PS5. I made a whole video about that, but it's still not fully alleviated. It just really wasn't a good port. That's just all it comes down to. And outside of that, the game does not have really good netcode. You know, I've made a million comments about that already. You can see it down in the comments and stuff like that. It just doesn't have good netcode. And on PS4, it's markedly worse. It's just really bad. You'll have a lot of teleporting, a lot of rollbacking, a lot of how the hell did that hit me? Like literally like rage moments. On PC, I would say that only happens like 1 out of the 10 times. Granted, everybody's on a solid connection and stuff like that. So if you would like the optimal experience, I have to strongly recommend that you use a PC port. On the PC port, you can actually get all the characters and all the DLC for free, all of it. I'm not gonna, hey, don't try and trap me up now, all right? But there is a link that will allow you to get everything. It's widely available. I'll see about, see what I can do to hook you up. The PC port really is just leagues and bounds above the PS4 version for a number of different ways. You can actually use certain characters. There's certain characters I would just avoid completely on PS4, like Lightning. Lightning was the whole reason I even bought this game. I wanted to use Lightning, but her ranges just don't work on PS4. It's really hard to judge them with the rollback and stuff like that. You will pull off things, granted, once you start getting into skill and everything like that, you'll be able to hit people consistently, and that's a good feeling. Is that, hey, I press a button and what happened? What was supposed to happen happened. That's a terrific feeling. Anybody that plays fighting games or any game can tell you that. But it's really it's day and night. That's the only way I can put it. If you can play on PC, I strongly recommend playing on PC. Of course, Ethernet. This is not a Wi-Fi game at all. Some games people feel like they can fly on Wi-Fi. Don't do it. This ain't one of those games. I just don't know how any other way to stress that to you. It's for the sake of everybody's sanity. Please just don't Wi-Fi on this game. It's dreadful. So one thing I want to talk about when it comes to this game is going to be the communities of this game. And this is going to be kind of a little bit of a contentious topic. There's several different communities that you can kind of look to get games in and stuff like that. One of the main ones is Dissidia Network, which I helped build brick by brick along with a lot of different people. A few years ago, there really wasn't a central hub for Dissidia players or anything like that. I think this is probably the one that I would co-sign the most. I still know all the admins and stuff like that. I trust that something horrible won't happen to you there. There's people that care, you know what I mean? They're knowledgeable. and the admin team will help, you know, alleviate any concerns or any type of issues or stuff like that. That is a good place to go. There's a lot of resource, a lot of guides and stuff like that. It's a little hit or miss though. Some people only really play on PS4 there. There really isn't a PC community there. There was like a, I don't know, succession away from that community when it comes to PC, and they went over to another Discord, which we'll talk about now. And this is the Reddit Discord. I really only have ever used this Discord to get PC games. It's really the only place you can go to really get consistent PC games. And I don't know anybody in the admin or mod team, so travel here at your own risk. I can't really. Now, one thing to note when it comes to the communities of this game is that it has always been extraordinarily splintered. I don't know if it's just the Final Fantasy fan base or if it's just the Dissidia, you know, competitiveness or what the hell it is, but it has never really been hunky-dory. You know, there's always been a lot of weird energy in certain situations. We've done our best, of course, but those are going to be, you know, the places that I recommend, you know, to go. So let's start off by going over a few bullet points when it comes to the game's mechanics. First off, let's talk about movement. Now, there are two modes of transportation in this game, referred to as free dashing as well as target dashing. So target dashing is when you just target an opponent. You always have to be targeted to at least one opponent in this game at all times. And all you do is dash towards them. You press R1 and you dash towards them. That's it. Now, you'll see that while this is the fastest way to get to your opponent, it isn't really good because opponents can normally just turn on you and just hit you with HP attacks. It's really predictable, really punishable. So what you'll want to try and do instead is called free dashing, where you still are targeted on an opponent, but you kind of glide to the left and right. This will allow you to be able to kind of approach them at an angle, and it makes them have to make a decision. Normally, any projectiles that are thrown at you while you're free dashing will normally just go right by you, and it's better to just kind of be unpredictable. They have to commit and you don't. You let them swing first, you can easily just challenge them. It's really quite good, especially for things like assassins. If you're trying to approach a marksman, you're going to really need to have your free dashing down for sure. But that doesn't mean that that needs to be the only type of dash you use. By mixing up both approaches, this will ensure that you can kind of mix it up and keep your opponents guessing on how you're going to truly approach them. And then moving on to probably the biggest hurdle, the biggest thing that I hear most complaints about, and this is the targeting system. Now, the targeting system in this game leaves a little bit to be desired. I am not going to sugarcoat that. It is not that great. It's okay. So, like I mentioned before, you have to be targeted on at least one opponent at all times, or the core, or if you actually want to get fancy with it, you can actually target the summon for some insane reason. But this makes you kind of move in a very linear fashion because you're always moving towards the target, whether you're free dashing or target dashing. So you want to kind of get in the habit of knowing exactly where you are on the map. We'll talk about the mini map here in a moment. The mini map, this thing right here, is extremely critical. We'll talk about that in a second. But essentially making sure that you know where you are at all times and where your opponents are is going to be very important. So there's two different types of targeting. There is by position. Now, what you see on the screen doesn't always correlate to your targeting system. What I mean by that, if you look here on the mini map, you'll see targets right from left to right. It'll move those targets from left to right. So if you do L2, it'll do left, left, left. If you do R2, right, right, right. But sometimes if you're trying to eyeball it, you might think that a target is closer to you, you know, or to your left or something like that. If people are kind of jumbled up or it's not really clear to ascertain exactly where they are, you might end up targeting the wrong person, and that can cost you a lot. It can cost you a whole game. It has many times for me. So targeting is something that really just comes down to practice, awareness with your mini map. That is something that's gonna take time. That's all there is to it. It took me like, well, I don't even want to say it out loud. It took me longer than it needed to honestly get good with my targeting. Now, outside of position, you can also use lists. So what list does is you can actually target the opponent based off their numbers. You'll see that each team is numbered 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6. So you can cycle through 4, 5, and 6. You know, L2, R2, you'll cycle up and down. That is what I would say is more of an expert level. It really allows you to not have any mistakes as long as you are looking at your mini map and you know what each person is numbered at the beginning of the match. You will have a level of precision that most like other targeting just doesn't have, honestly. But I would say that you can excel with both of them. I still personally use positioning, but when you switch to that list, obviously you can really have some really like snap reactions. It's really, really good. Don't sleep on it. So moving on, let's talk about one of the most important aspects out there, hitting somebody, and more importantly, not getting hit. So this game operates off a two-tier function, I guess is the best way to put it. There's something referred to as bravery and bravery attacks and hit points and hit point attacks. Let's talk about bravery attacks first. What bravery is essentially is a system that they developed, which is actually pretty unique, where every character starts off with 1,000 bravery, right? It's your responsibility to build up enough bravery in order to land an HP attack. So the traditional attacks that you'll see being performed out there on the field consistently are going to be bravery attacks. You can only bring one HP attack onto the field at any given time. So all these attacks that you see listed right here on the move list, these are all bravery attacks. The idea here is to build the brave high enough so that you can land a lot of damage with HPs and then, erase the stock, as we mentioned before. That's the main idea, the main focus here. However, it really just comes down to a massive tug of war. That's what bravery is. And you really want to try and build as much bravery as you can on your side and not let your opponents build a lot of bravery, because obviously if they land an HP attack, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a bad situation. It can really change the momentum of the match quite quickly. If opponents are out there crushing you with HP attacks back to back, it's not going to be a good look for you. So think of it as a massive tug of war. That is kind of the best way I can put it. You want to build bravery, not have your opponent building bravery, and not be out there feeding bravery. That's the major thing. So bravery attacks are pretty simple. There's no combo executions or anything like that. No motions. It's just literally normally X and a direction, and that's it. They're all listed for each respective character. And then let's talk about HP attacks. Now, in previous titles, Duodecim and stuff like that, you could have like multiple HP attacks. Almost said Junction. I've been playing Final Fantasy VIII too much. You could have multiple HP attacks equipped at the same time. Can't do that here. You have to pre-select your HP attack at the beginning of the game. Now, one major thing when it comes to HP attacks, they are unblockable unless you run specific, almost said perks, unless you run specific EX skills, which are really not that good. They're unblockable. The reason that they're unblockable, this is an arena fighter. You have all this space to avoid somebody, and if they didn't make it unblockable, the matches would literally never ever end. So that's really, I think, the idea behind them. So when it comes to HP attacks, you might think on paper, okay, I want to wait until I have enough killing brave in order to go in and try and land an HP attack. What I personally say is if you get to around 2,000 to maybe 2.7 K brave, obviously if you have higher brave, that's fine. You can also notice when you can actually HP and kill somebody, your bravery will start glowing here. And also in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, it will also show you when your teammates can kill somebody, which is very important. So make sure you're not pulling off HP attacks and just downing somebody when you could have actually killed them. Now, you might think on paper that the better idea is to just land consistent HP attacks as much as possible. The thing with HP attacks is that they do have recovery. They normally do leave you vulnerable. Every single one has recovery of some type. Even if they have glide and stuff like that, they do leave you vulnerable. So you have to be quite careful about when you go to actually pull them off. And I would say if you can get down to 2K to 2.7, you don't necessarily need to wait for that killing brave. You want to try and maximize safe opportunities. If you can go in and perform the HP attack without getting punished, that's going to be a good look for you and your team. That trumps everything else. Now, one critical thing to note when it comes to bravery attacks, and one thing that took me longer than necessary to actually understand, is that characters have a completely different kit when they're on the ground than when they're in the air. When they're in the air, everybody's kits changes. There might be a little bit of overlap with the moves, but so just don't expect to be able to use the same moves you can use on the ground, in the air. The move list does specify which moves can be used where. This makes you understand. I actually like that a lot. It lends a lot of versatility and it gives you more options than just running with that base grounded kit. Just keep that in mind. Now, one thing with bravery attacks is that most of them are done in like a 3-part string. You'll see 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hits. That's how it is for most melees. For marksmen, they specialize in doing a lot of projectile based things. So they can only do about 4 hits. Just keep in mind, and we'll talk about this here a bit more. If you complete the string, that does leave you vulnerable, just like any other fighting game. If you complete the entirety of a combat string, you're gonna have some recovery. You'll be punishable. So we'll talk about that a bit more. But for most cases, when you do bravery attacks, you want to do like 1, 2 if you're melee. If you're marksman, you want to try and do 3 projectiles to hold them in place. Sometimes it's better to hold them in place than hit them away so that somebody else can come in and try and capitalize. We'll talk about that a bit more in the setup section. Now, as I mentioned before, this game does have a lot of similarities to Smash Brothers. One of the core things is going to be shielding. Now, holding your shield down will allow you to block any bravery attacks. As I mentioned before, HP attacks will also hit you, don't matter if you blocked or not. So the important thing here is to not be in situations where you have to block for an extended period of time. It is probably on par with like Smash Ultimate when it comes to like how long you can block. But the longer you block, the worse it gets for you, honestly. But it is honestly the best button you have on your controller. Being able to block and being able to not feed brave and your awareness and know what's going on the field, that is going to make or break your ability as a player, honestly. So just make sure you are blocking, as necessary, not feeding brave, being aware of what's going out there on the field, it is tantamount. And keeping in the vein about defensive options, I want to talk about sidestepping. Now, you can sidestep by pressing L1 plus directional, any of the 6 directional. Now, this is an important thing because you can step to avoid bravery attacks, HP attacks, stuff like that. But your step has quite a bit of recovery. It normally is a lot of people wait for the step. They know it's coming. They know that's one of your only options. And then once you do that, you're completely vulnerable. So people, will come up to you, try and match HP, wait for you to step, and then punish you. It's kind of a game. It's a rock, paper, scissors, RPS, honestly. So just be careful with that. Steps do have a lot of recovery. Each different class, which we'll break down here in a moment, does have different types of recoveries. I'll leave that link below because there is a really great document that breaks down recovery frames for everything. If you're into kind of, the frame numbers, frame data, I got that for you. It wasn't made by me, it was made by somebody else, but it is terrific. Now, the last 2 things I want to talk about when it comes to defense, number 1 is jumping. Jumping is extremely underrated in this game. It allows you to get out of situations that you would normally just have to take, honestly. Jumping also is good if you are target dashing, like we mentioned before, and you need to arrest your momentum. Jumping will allow you to break your momentum without having to commit to a step or something like that. Really good stuff. And you'll come to find out that people will just run up to you and, if there's charge HPs, which we'll talk about here in a moment, which are pretty annoying in this game, if you jump, you can kind of just erase that entire threat. It's really good. And then the second thing I want to talk about is wall running. So if there are any type of obstacles next to you, like any of these lampposts or anything like that, or even any walls, you can run up them. And this will allow you to kind of get out of situations. If people are expecting you to step, you have another option that they now have to consider. Is really good. And this will help you stop from getting killed so much. It really improves your defensive game quite a bit because it's just another variable that your opponent has to take into account. Keep in mind, make sure you don't sleep on that. Okay, now let's talk about one of the most important aspects of the UI. This is going to be the minimap. The minimap located right here in the top right-hand corner of the game. This will show you a lot of things. It will show you the position of both your team as well as your opponents, all the numbers that we mentioned before. But in addition to that, it will also show these rings. You see these rings? They're represent 5, we call them 5 meters or so. It will show you how close the opponent is to you, and you can use it to kind of gauge if your attack is going to reach or not. If you're using projectile volleys or something like that, or if you have a range-based HP or a search-based HP, this will allow you to know if it's going to land or not. You don't have to guess. This will allow you to also know when people are coming after you. Say you're going to try and isolate somebody's running after you, see their target running really quickly. I would say if I had to put a number on it, it should be somewhere around the neighborhood of 60-40. You should be spending something like 40% of your time looking at that target as opposed to just the main field, because you can only see so much, right? You're just one of 3. There's no way to see the entire full arena, at all times. So keep that in mind. That is going to be absolutely critical and tantamount to knowing where everybody is, what you can do, where you need to be, and what decision you can make. You make the best decisions in this game with the amount of information you have, and that can give you some of the best information in the game. Now, as far as the rest of the UI, it's pretty straightforward. There's 2 different ones. There is, the updated version, which is kind of, I don't really like it. It's like the simplified version. It doesn't really show enough details for me. And then they have the arcade UI. Now, that shows both teams, of course. One thing I want to call out here is you can also see who's actually targeting you. In the bottom left-hand corner, you see the little red icon. It will show you who is currently targeting you. So if you need to know, you kind of in a flash who's running after you or something like that, or anything like that, just keep that in mind. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention, HP attacks. One way to know if you are being targeted for an HP attack, your screen will go dark. So when you see your screen starting to darken, just be aware that somebody's trying to HP target you. Now, if this is a marksman, you need to kind of wait to step or something like that. If it's a melee, you probably need to look at them in order to figure out, how you need to react to that. So keep that in mind as well. Next up, let's talk about the comeback mechanic of this game. Guys, remember back in the day, 2012 and stuff like that, when comeback mechanics were all the rage. UMVC3 had the X Factor comebacks. Everybody loved those, of course, Virgil. And then, we had Smash 4, I believe, or something like that. No, Smash for Wii U that had the rage mechanic. I know everybody loved that as well. Then Tekken also had a rage mechanic. So, they decided that NT needed to have a comeback mechanic as well. So they have summons, full screen summons, which are essentially the best way to think of it is your comeback mechanic, honestly. So every 30 seconds or so, you will see a crystal core spawn on the field. Once you destroy the core, you'll be given crystal points, and in the top left-hand corner, your summon gauge will build until ultimately you're able to summon. Now, when your gauge is full, your summon will not automatically trigger. Each character needs to press a touchpad if you're on PS4, PS5 controllers, and this will allow the summon to happen instantaneously. However, if all 3 players do not press it at the same time, it will kind of delay the process. If 1 person is doing it, it takes a long time. 2 people are doing it, it's kind of moderately sped up. 3 people, it's instantaneous. So you always want to go for that instant summon. Honestly, you can get in like a frame. If all people press it at once, it's good. But one thing you don't want to do is die for the summon. I have seen the best players in the world lose to bad summon calls. If somebody calls summon and you think that they have a functional brain, just go ahead and trust it. You just want to trust that they look at the arena, they can see that you have enough time to do it. Even if it doesn't feel like it, trusting the summon sometimes is the best time to go. Unless, hey, you're going to die. You know, if you press that button, the match is going to end. You're on your final stock, you got 5 HP, you press summon, the match is over. Maybe don't do it then, but if you can do it safely, you want to make sure you summon, but don't force it. And don't be a solo summoner unless you absolutely have to, or unless you have a massive lead, or, you know, you just don't be that guy. So when a summon is on the field, this is probably the best way to shred down the opponent's bravery. Now, you'll see that in situations where the opponent has a lot of bravery, what I personally like to do is just focus on trying to get the summon out, because it's going to be safer to try and let the summon shred their bravery as opposed to somebody taking a risk going in and then dying because, you know, they got clipped, they got held, they died, whatever. So sometimes getting a summon off is a good way to reduce the enemy's bravery. It's really, really a solid strategy, I would say. Each summon has 2 different phases. They have the pre-summoning phase and a post-summoning phase. And each of them have respective buffs. You can see it on the screen here. Now, because I know everybody's going to ask, the best summons are Odin and the best summons are Shiva. I did make a whole video about this. Odin allows you to go faster, and you might not think this is a game changer, but you are able to chase down everybody. No one can escape your grasp when you have Odin, which really did change the meta in this game. Not for the best in some ways. After that, Shiva. Shiva allows your EX skill to charge faster, which I think is absolutely broken when it comes to some characters. Like, it allows you to do things you should not be able to do. Just because if you have a really strong EX, it is going to allow you to just dominate the field. And then everybody else, I think Bahamut's probably 3rd, but it's whatever, you know, just don't pick Leviathan. That's pretty much what I'm tell you. I don't care if he's getting DLC in FF16. Don't pick Leviathan or your teammates will rage. And now I think would be a very appropriate time to kind of emphasize one of the more key components of the game, which is this is a team-based game. This is 3v3 versus 3v3, not 6 1v1 matches. That's what a lot of people seem to kind of misconstrue, is that it's not your responsibility to find one target and then try and just beat them up over and over again. That's not what this game is. The team that always puts, you know, the teamwork and just kind of the goal of working together ahead of everybody else really is going to trump versus the people that are stuck on 1v1s, or they want to go do their Faded Cloud versus Sephiroth 1v1, or, you know, they kind of feel like, hey, this guy, I'm better than this guy, so let me go stun on him, let me go BM him and stuff like that. Don't do stuff like that, because it really is going to drag your team down. And each class has a role, which we're actually going to right now. Okay, now it's time for the big one. The one that a lot of people really just don't like in this game, and that is going to be the class system. So there are 3 different classes in Dissidia NT. You have Assassins, which are like the speed type characters. You have the Vanguards, which are kind of like the tank type characters. And of course you have the Marksmen, which are, you know, the kind of backline, the sniper and the ivory tower, that kind of thing. So the thing is that the game operates fundamentally, I'm not making this up, fundamentally from the ground up, it operates in a triangle. Not unlike like a Fire Emblem series. Assassins beat Marksmen, Marksmen beat Vanguards, Vanguards beat Assassins. That is the holy trinity. And a lot of people really don't like that. Some people just kind of want to play the characters and the game the way they want to. However, doing that is a direct contrast to actually being able to be good at the game, because the characters are outlined in a very specific manner and they have to really be played in a very specific manner in order to excel. So if you try and pick fights that you are not designed to win, you might win them sometimes, but it really is not going to always go your way, especially when you're dealing with more experienced players. They're going to know, you know, how to overcome that. Okay, for this next part, we had to put the mic down. Reason being is that we're going to go over every single character in this game. And we're going to go over not just that, about how to use each one of them on a very basic level. It would take me hours and hours, maybe even days, to go over every single character and every little thing they can do. What I'm looking to do here is give you a very basic outline of how to use a character. We're going to do them from easiest to use all the way to the hardest character to use. So we're going to go through each respective class. We're going to do Assassin, Vanguard, and then Marksman. So the idea here is for me to give you a basic understanding of the character, what you should be doing with them, what they excel at. As I'm doing the editing right now, that I did kind of mix up a little bit of the EX skills as well as the passive abilities. So let me clarify this. EX skills are the skills that you press triangle on your pad to do, but a lot of them work in tandem with the character's passive skills. Each character has at least one passive special ability that they can use that only they can do, but a lot of that is really tied with the EX skill, so you can understand why it's kind of a little of the lines are blurred and stuff like that. But again, the attached doc will clarify all that, so just a disclaimer on that front. So let's talk about, as a marksman, what you should actually be doing out there. What's the game plan? As a marksman, your entire goal is to set the pace and the tempo for the entire match. You are the one that can really shift the paradigm safely outside of your other melee characters. By throwing projectiles, knocking people out of position, even if you don't hit them with the projectile, if they have to block and you can knock them away, that will give your melees an opportunity to advance, close the gap, that kind of thing. If you can pull off an HP attack and catch somebody slipping. One of the key things in this game that you always want to try and create is a 2v3 situation. If you have 2 people fighting against 3 people, clearly there's always going to be an advantage state, and you can use that to make favorable positions for yourself while keeping the opponent on the back foot. So downs are one of the most critical aspects of the game, and as a marksman, you can do that very, very safely. Now, as somebody that started off as a marksman main and eventually learned all 3 other roles, so one key thing as a marksman you want to keep an eye on is making sure you're not pressing too many buttons. That's one thing I see as marksman players, is that they never stop pressing buttons. And you want to make sure that you're pressing the right buttons at the right time. Don't want to miss opportunities to safely down the opponent. When you down somebody, you get that 2v3 situation, extremely advantageous, and it can really steamroll. This game is very, very momentum based. So you want to make sure if somebody's next to you, one of your teammates is next to you and they're holding for you, you get that down safely, of course, right? So what I'm saying is, if you're always out there throwing and mashing projectiles, you are going to miss opportunities in order to get downs, which can really help shift the paradigm in your favor. So keep that in mind. And the final footnote I want to put about being a marksman is that it is not your responsibility to fight this speed. The only thing you should worry about when it comes to the speed is preemptive measures. If you can put out something that's from a safe distance that's going to deter them from coming at you, that's fine. If they're already in your face, it's no longer your responsibility to try and fight them. Unless you have something like a Vanguard, it's your responsibility to get out of that situation safely without pressing as many buttons as possible and regroup with your team. Now, one thing that a lot of people that you'll see as marksman players is that people will be out of position. So what I mean by that is that your Vanguard is very far away, and that you're isolated. That's one thing that happens, and a lot of people say, I hate playing shoot. The reason being is that they don't have any protection. They're out there just bare ass. They're raw dogging it. And of course, the most vulnerable role, people are going to know how to fight them. People are going to know how to take away their limited defensive options. So you don't ever want to be in a situation like that. And then the final point that I have on marksman is going to be, make sure you are close enough to your team. Just because you have projectiles you can throw from 3 rings away, this does not mean that you need to constantly be 3 rings away. A lot of HP attacks don't have that far of range. So if you're constantly out of range, you can't make those confirms, you can't make those punishes and stuff like that, that's going to be a problem. And it's going to be even more of a problem if you become isolated. If you get separated from the pack and the other 2 melees are 4 rings away and you are by yourself, being pressured by speed is going to be hell on earth. It's not going to be a good look for you. So let's kick this thing off talking about marksman. So one of the easiest marksmen to use, hands down, is going to be Shantotto. Reason being is that she does have quite a bit more moves to learn than other characters, but her game plan is extraordinarily simple. It's really easy to pull off. Her bravery attacks are massive. You can see there that she shoots like gigantic suns at people for the most part, huge water orbs and stuff like that. She can defend herself. She can build bravery. She can really, I like her defense also. She can defend herself really well. She can fight the enemy marksman well. She can get the core. She just pretty much has it all. The only thing that's a little tricky when it comes to Shantotto is that when she loses 1,000 points of HP, and you'll see this a lot out here, she becomes a different character. Her moves become faster. She can hold and stuff like that. We refer to it as regular mode and then potato mode. When she's in her regular mode, essentially what she can do is just she can build a lot of brave. She can't really hold. She has no holding attacks when she's in her regular form. And you can actually run the whole match like that. You just essentially become a brave battery. Your job is to just build a lot of brave and cash out as much as possible. However, once you lose the 1,000, you become a potato. Like literally, she becomes insane. She becomes like an S tier character. she has an insane, like, just versatility in her attacks. The best attacks to use, honestly, are going to be back brave in the air, referred to as bursts. They're lightning pillars that just keep the opponent in, they keep them in check, hold them for an insane amount of time. And then the range is just absolutely astounding. It's like a 360 globe around her. It's a search brave. And then outside of burst, when it comes to Shantotto, she can really hold quite well with her fire. Her neutral brave on the air and in the ground is really good hold as well. But yeah, when it comes to Shantotto, honestly, in rage mode, the only two things you need to use is burst and poison gun. Her dash attack, poison, when she's in rage mode is one of the best attacks in this game. It has insane tracking. It will almost always hit, good range, really fast. Just use those two attacks when she's in rage mode and it will literally dominate the whole field with ease. And probably the only thing when it comes to Shantotto that I don't love is her HP attack. She does have glide on Divine Malison. That's her preferred HP attack. But the thing is that has very short range. It's like 2 meters or so, maybe 2.5. But she has to be relatively close in order to cash out, and it's really slow. So it's hard to really punish people that are pressing buttons or finishing strings and stuff like that. You really have to have a read on them. But on the plus side, her EX skill is absolutely broken. Colossal Shantotto gives you complete invincibility. If it hits the opponent that you're targeting, or even that you are targeting, anybody in that line of sight, it will take all their brave and give it to you. So I've seen people max out their brave like 9999. Based off of this, it's inherently broken. I don't know why they left it like this. You are vulnerable when you shrink back down, but most people tend to just mass teleport, but you can still get caught if there's a surge HP on you or anything on you. You just might not have enough frames to just immediately mass teleport. And up next for Marksmen, when it comes to some of the easiest ones, we have Yshtola. Now, Yshtola used to be absolutely just dreadful. She was like a campy type of Marksman, but they completely retooled her from the ground up. So the Yshtola you're getting wasn't the one that we got when we first played the game, which is good for everybody. She's actually quite good. She has extremely good versatility. She has 2 different forms, Thaumaturge as well as Conjurer. Let's talk about Thaumaturge first. Thaumaturge is more of a offensive base skill, if you want to call that. It allows her to shoot like ranged projectiles and stuff like that. It allows her to kind of keep the pressure up, hold for her teammates as well. The toolkit is just really, really good. She has really good search braves in this. Really good if you're trying to be offensive. Probably if you are on a flat stage, the only thing you really ever need to do is neutral brave on the ground. See this ice crystal right here? You can literally just do that and get killing brave. It's so good. In this form, her EX skill is called Foul, which is a massive bravery conduit. And it's just, if you really want to be a true scumbag, use Foul and then cast bravery conduit next to it. You can essentially just like block off a whole portion of the stage. It's really, really good. And then outside of that, her Conjurer form, which I think is actually pretty good as well. It's almost like Emperor, because we'll talk about Emperor here in a second. It's more of like a slow moving, defensive, static kind of playstyle. She can shoot these green orbs, which track very slowly onto her targeted opponent. She can also put some traps on the ground as well. And her neutral brave on the ground, which is Stone, moves pretty fast and pretty far as well. I think it's like maybe 3 rings. It's really, really damn good. You really want to use this form if you're being pressured or you just don't have a Vanguard for whatever reason. It can allow you to play a bit more defensive and so be relatively safe. Her EX form here essentially allows her to just build Brave as well as HP points. Anybody that's within the parameter, which is an excellent EX skill. Yshtola is one of the easier characters in my opinion. You just need to really get both forms down. One thing to note is when you switch between forms, it will reset her EX gauge. So constantly switching isn't going to be good if you're trying to use those EX skills. So when it comes to Yshtola, the 2 HP attacks that you really want to focus on is Scion's Holy, which is a really quick HP, can punish a lot of finished strings, static attacks. It's really good. And then the absolutely broken Juggernaut, which is Spiritual Ray. It's like Ultimecia's Hell's Judgment on crack. It just gives a gigantic hitbox above and below the target. There's been so many happy birthdays about that. It is just incredible. Those are going to be the HPs that you want to focus on. Moving on, we have the character that really helped me understand the game because my ass was struggling when the game first came out, and that is Ace. Ace is one of the easiest characters in this game, but he is also one of the worst characters in this game, unfortunately. Hailing from Type 0 fame, he uses a lot of cards in his gameplay, which kind of is the hallmark of his entire strategy. It's like a lot of like gambling, risk-based type thing. So a couple things with Ace. He's one of those characters that unfortunately do not have a Search Brave. So what that means is that he needs line of sight for every projectile, which isn't good on a lot of stages that have a lot of obstacles. So you really have to keep that in mind. But when it comes to Ace, the basic game plan really is to use his neutral brave as much as possible. His Neutral Brave has pretty decent range. It can hold as long as you do 3 cards instead of 4, and it won't allow them to not blow the opponent away, which is good. His Forward Brave on the ground and his Forward Brave on the air are really good, but they knock the opponent back, and they're only really good to like hinder from very far away. You can't hold with it, and they're both static, which means it can be searched quite easily. It's and then you have the Defensive Maneuver, which is his card tower, which is really good as well. Do keep in mind, for any defensive maneuvers that we go over, they are only normally a temporary reprieve. They aren't a permanent measure because your opponent will find a way to get through it. Nothing in this game is completely unbeatable. Like, there is a way around every single thing, so make sure you aren't really leaning on that too much. And then for Ace, his EX skill is card draw. Essentially, there's 4 different types of cards you can draw. Yellow cards, which gets a force, which like builds your brave. If you get 4 of them, it's actually quite good. And then we have the black cards, you know what it is, baby. And then we have the black cards, which are stop. If you hit somebody with stop, it does exactly what it says. It stops them. Mega stop keeps them stopped for an ungodly amount of time. But even if you get like the 2 cards, it's pretty good. And then blue cards is something like force as well. It's okay. It's not that great. And then the red cards is also one that you really want. Red cards, if you have like 2 or 3 of them, it shoots a super fast projectile, which is kind of hard to block, honestly. And it does a lot of damage. If you get like 2, 3, or 4, you can do quite a bit of damage with the red cards, especially if you have something like Mighty Strikes up. It can definitely cook. The only HP worth using for Ace really is Monolith Beam. Like I mentioned, Surge HPs are they're just better than everything else. Fire RF, a lot of people like to use, but against a person that has good awareness and the enemy marksman has good awareness, you're going to get searched out of your draws. It's not gonna work for you, bro. It's really interruptible. It has a lot of recovery. It only really works against people with bad awareness. It's good for beginners. I think most waves are actually pretty decent for beginners, but it's just not a long-term viable solution, if I'm being honest with you. And that's pretty much it for Ace. He started off as my boy, but friendship ended. You know, we had to graduate to bigger and better things. You know the vibes. And then moving on to medium difficulty, we have only 2 characters here. Number 1 is going to be Golbez. Golbez really is a scourge in this game. He is extremely good marksman that has a very, very key critical flaw. The reason that he's not considered like uber mensch as far as like he's really hard to use is that he has a very simple mechanic. He has this dragon, which anybody that's played Final Fantasy IV, it's that same dragon that he used to summon, Shadow Dragon. He starts every match with that. Once he loses at least 1000 HP, he loses a dragon and he gets completely gimped. All his magic goes down a single level, but he becomes pretty useless, honestly. He can do things, but it's not worth it. You'll see here in a moment. But honestly, Golbez is really the neutral god. He can control neutral in this game so well. And if you're on a flat stage, he is probably the best marksman in the game. He is a complete god for one reason, and that is his neutral brave. You see this ice that he throws out is just insane. It has insane speed, really good tracking, a high priority. It's just, I don't know what they were thinking with this. You can literally just use that one attack and just build killing, just like Yshtola. It's better than the ice that she throws out, honestly, but it is just really, really good. His entire kit is extraordinarily strong. Only thing he really doesn't have is a kind of a reliable search brave. He has one, but it's really slow. It's static, not that good. So honestly, his attacks are really good. His skills are really good. His EX is quite broken. Now, if you lose Shadow Dragon, your EX skill will be recharging the Shadow Dragon. I only ever really recommend doing Shadow Dragon again if you are in an advantageous state. Last thing you want to do is summon the dragon back, immediately get hit, and then that's just going to be a bad scenario for your whole team because you lose all agency at that point. So you want to make sure that you're summoning dragon back in a safe state. Now, if you already have dragon, you get an additional EX skill, which is going to be Binding Cold, which is just broken. It has HP poise, which means that it can interrupt HP attacks. It just is really, really good. And it just freezes everybody in that area, making him easy picking. He's just a ridiculous character, honestly. Preferred HP attacks are going to be Twin Meteor, which is one of the best HPs in this game. It's inherently broken. I don't know what, this is one of those things, you know, sometimes you just gotta slow down and think, what were they thinking? What were they cooking? You know what I mean? When they thought about some of this. Twin Meteor is inherently broken because it summons one massive meteor. And if that wasn't enough, then another meteor right after it. Now, if he does lose dragon, it goes down to one meteor, but the amount of space that this encapsulates is insane. There's so many people that get hit just for being in the wrong space, wrong time. It is just inherently broken, in my opinion. His other HPs are kind of waves, they're okay, but really if you're trying to take him seriously, use Twin Meteor. One key thing when it comes to Golbez, if you want to excel with this character, you have to have good awareness. And after good awareness, you need to have good decision making, honestly. Because you need to put yourself in advantageous situations so you're not getting clipped and losing drag. Now for defensive options, Golbez's main thing is going to be his air water ball. This water ball is quite massive, it tracks and stuff like that. It's a good way to keep people off you. Keep that in mind. And then the other character we have in medium tier is going to be Yuna. Coming from Final Fantasy X fame, from Besaid Island, she really just, she's quite a blight on this game. You know, sometimes I just pray for relief. I just pray that, you know, the developers, they'll just go back and say, hey, we made a mistake. There was something, I don't know what, you know, what was going on in the brainwaves, but we just need to fix her. You know what I mean? She just, it ain't, you know what I mean? I don't know what I was thinking. She is a nightmare, honestly, to fight against at the highest level. But the thing is that she has some type of skill ceiling, I'm gonna say. She isn't like completely like brain dead. You know, I think Golbez and Shantotto are a bit more brain dead than her. The main thing with Yuna is that she is kind of the jack of all trades. She has answers for everything. She has great surge brave. She has great line of sight. She has great hold. She has the best EX, and let's talk about that now. Her EX skills are just insane. She has the ability to summon Valifor, and he has 3 different levels, 1, 2, and 3. So essentially, at level 1, she gets something called Sonic Wings. What this is a Search Brave that she can use as long as she is attacking. So if she's attacking one target, target A we'll call it, right? She can do Sonic Wings on either target B or target C. Now, as you can imagine, this gives her unparalleled screen control. She charges Valifor so quickly, especially doubly so if you have something like Shiva, that her screen control is just massive. No other marksman can compete with her when it comes to screen control, not even close. So this allows her to really prevent a lot of situations, save her teammates, harass marksmen, you know what I mean? Like, she can do a lot with very little resources, and it kind of creates a gulf between her and the rest of the marksmen. Her basic game plan, unfortunately, and I really quite don't like this really, her goal really is to press as much buttons as possible. And I hate to say that because the more buttons she's pressing, the more access she has to Valifor, and then the more she can do his other attacks. Now, Valifor stack 2, he has 2 different things. If you are on the ground, it does energy wave, which is really good. It does like a wave. It's just like from the actual FF10. It does a wave and then it explodes. It's really good off me tool and stuff like that. And if she's in the air, she has like energy blast, which is essentially like Ace's forward brave, but in the air, it's decent. It's not that great. And if it gets to stack 3 for Valifor, she gets energy nova, which does HP damage for an insane reason. You'll see that a lot when we go through the characters. Once it gets to the highest level, it tends to do HP damage. So it's just an extraordinarily good tool, probably the best EX in the entire game. Her main tools are everything. Everything is good. Probably the standout tool that she has is called Pasado. Pasado is just her neutral brave on attack. It has extremely fast startup, and it also can hold people for ages. No other marksman has that. Other marksmen have like, you know, projectiles they can throw and stuff like that. The only one that even comes close is Ultimecia, and for hers to be really broken, she has to be in like level 2. And when it comes to Yuna, her best defensive option is going to be her air dash attack. When she's on the ground, she's actually quite vulnerable, so keep that in mind. Now, when it comes on the HP front, Yuna, all of them are pretty good. The ones that most people tend to use are Great Whirl, which is a static HP, which means you cast it and it sits right there. If anybody runs into it, it will damage them. It actually stays up a little bit too long in my opinion, maybe like 20 seconds, 20 in-game seconds, 30 seconds maybe. It's way too long, maybe 15 to 20. Don't quote me on that. Then you have Ultima, which is a really fast HP attack, and then you have Holy, which is a pillar. The thing is that Yuna is probably the best marksman in the game, tied with Terra. She has a lot of skills. They're all universally good. You know what I mean? I'm just a hater. I don't know what to say. I just don't like this character. I don't know what else to say. She's extremely good. She's one of those characters that you see in, you know, competitive games, like she carrying people. That's what it feels like sometimes. Yes, I'm the man that got hit by Energy Nova too many times. I'm the man that got hit by Great World too many times. Probably my favorite marksman to actually use, but definitely a bit on the more difficult side, I would say. The reason being is that holds really aren't his thing. You'll come to find that certain marksmen, holds really just, they're brave batteries. They're meant to build braves and punish, you know, the opponent and stuff like that. They're not really meant to hold. So his main thing is that he deploys these massive flares that can be used both on the ground and in the air. They are very slow moving. They occupy quite a big, I want to say pretty decent size of the actual field. And his entire prerogative is to force situations. To avoid the flares, you can also put a Thunder Crest on the ground, Air Back Brave on the ground. It's a static bravery attack, and people will run into it. More people run into it than you think. It can kind of be sort of used for holds, but it's not that great. And then one of his best tools that no one really uses, I never really hear a lot of people talking about it, is Back Brave on the ground, which is the electric thunder pillars. They are just incredibly good. Good defensive option, but also if you hold the button down, it will deploy the electric pillars away from him, and it moves really fast. It's a great interruption tool, and it's a good way to keep Emperor safe as well. Now, his EX skill is called Starfall. Now, Starfall is a great way to, if you want to slow down everybody's system, if you're on PS4s and chug the FPS, this is a great way to do it. It deploys these meteors that fall down in essentially a vertical column, and what it does is, if you can catch somebody pressing a button or finishing a string or anything like that, you can essentially trap them and take them off the field for about 10 to 15 seconds. It doesn't do too much actual bravery damage, but the main thing here is taking somebody off the field. You're making it a 2v3, because even if they block it, they're stuck there. You know, eventually it's going to actually break their shield if they block long enough, I want to say. Now, you can combo this into things like Thunder Crest and Jury Cell, but honestly, if you just hit somebody with this, I normally would throw Brave Conduit out there, try and build as much Brave as possible, punish them, move on to the next opponent. It's essentially a free down. It's really good. Emperor, I would actually throw in the mid tier as far as difficulty. He just has a very different game plan than the majority of the other marksmen, but he is very good. I think he's actually one of the best marksmen in the game for sure. So that'll do it for the medium. And then let's talk about some of the expert level marksmen. These are marksmen I would recommend learning after you've learned at least 2 or 3 other marksmen, honestly, because the reason is that they're just weird. They're different, they're difficult to use, they're unusual to use, and they're honestly kind of a little bit just unorthodox in their use case. So just keep that in mind. So to start us off with, the Clown Prince, of course, Kefka, Final Fantasy VI fame. This character is very fun. He's one of the most fun characters in this game, in my opinion. And his strategies are a bit more straightforward, I think, honestly. He has really good attacks. In neutral, you want to be using his neutral Brave, where he throws Faraga out. Now, this thing, once you fully charge it up, it can go like almost the length of a whole map. It will keep going and going and going. Now, you used to be able to do 2 of these. You can only do 1 of them now. Huge nerf, in my opinion. But it's really good against marksmen. It's really good against people that aren't paying attention, because it'll just hit them suddenly. It's quite good. If you want to hold, you can do the electricity move, which is a forward Brave on the ground. Be careful with that. You can easily get searched, but it is quite a good hold. Once it hits them, it will knock them down to the ground. That's the same with Yuna as well. She does her forward Brave on the ground. It won't knock them back. It'll just knock them straight down, which is actually very, very good as well. And then the rest of his attacks are pretty straightforward. One thing that I think a lot of people don't really use is his Air Back Brave, which is like, I believe is like his ultimate attack or something like that. His Air Back Brave is incredibly good. It is deceptively fast, and it has a tremendous hitbox. It's a really good way to catch people sleeping, especially if they're pressing square or something like that. I think it's exceptional. The only real HP worth using with him is going to be Trine. Trine is one of the fastest HPs in this game. You can punish people for finishing strings, for pressing static buttons. It's just terrific. There's no reason to use anything but Trine. And then his Fake Core on the ground is actually pretty good as well. Good defensive option. Now, Kefka's EX is actually really interesting. It's Heartless Angel. He goes in the air. He starts holding his head like this. You see the halo around him. The longer you hold this, the more stats effects that you will inflict around the AoE. Now, if you can do the full charge, you can definitely inflict. You can pretty much, it's a set play. You will cripple the enemy team, or whoever gets hit in the AoE, they're cooked. It's over. However, you can easily get searched. You can get hit out of it, and then you pretty much wasted it. And it has quite a long recharge time. I think it's like 60 seconds or so. It takes a while to recharge that. So keep that in mind. But Kefka, I love him. I wouldn't consider him top tier. He's a bit unusual to use, but I think it's pretty rewarding, pretty fun as well. And then next up, we have Ultimecia. I am actually playing Final Fantasy VIII right now, so I understand a bit more about her. And she is very interesting in this game, I would say. I think that she's probably the hardest actual shoot to use, in my opinion. The reason being is that she used to actually be much easier to use, but they adjusted the way that her stacks work. Her EX is referred to as Maleficum. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. But essentially what it does is allow her attacks to get more powerful the level she goes up to. Her and Garland are very much the same in that front. There's mouth stacks 1 and then mouth stacks 2. So once you get to 2, your attacks are much faster, they're much more powerful, they're much more potent, they do additional bravery damage. She starts cooking. There's no other way to put it. Her attacks are very unusual though. Like she throws axes and stuff like that with her forward brave on the ground, and they're kind of like lazily thrown. They hit them like at weird angles and stuff like that. Her ground dash attack is really good as well. She has great holds both in the ground and on the air. This is what I was talking about. It's not quite as good as Pasado, and it's okay. On the ground, her ground back brave is really good. We call it nail rain. It's just pretty much will just start throwing pillars of rain on them. Is really good. It's a good way to break up people that are in a corner or something like that. It's a good neutral tool at the beginning of the match. One of her best defensive options is going to be Lance. Now, in the air, I think she's the only marksman that has that. If she does forward brave in the air, it will summon a lance, but she can also charge it. So if somebody is like trying to approach her, she can like charge it, and then if they whiff or something like that, she can punish them. It pushes them very far away. This used to be ungodly broken, but they did patch it, but it's still really good. Now outside of that, her toolkit, I think honestly is just expert level. You really need to do a lot of pre-planning when it comes to Ultimecia because a lot of her attacks are slow. She does lose to a lot of marksmen, like Golbez in particular eats her alive, because she needs to get to stack 2 to even be viable to really hit him, honestly. Her preferred HP attack is definitely going to be Hell's Judgment. A lot of people do like to use Apocalypse. I don't think it's that good. Hell's Judgment is just it's a huge hitbox. There's really no reason not to use it in Apocalypse. It just really isn't viable on some stages, honestly. Now her EX skill, Maelstrom, is actually pretty interesting because it does have HP poise, which means it will trigger other HP attacks out there. If she's in Mouse Axe 2, essentially what it will do is hold the opponent long enough for her to do any of her HP attacks. It's like a self-contained hold. It has a pretty good hitbox, and it's a good get off me too as well. It's not one of the best ones. I think it's overall kind of underwhelming, especially when you have things like Valifor running around, but it is a good self-setup and a good interruption tool nonetheless. So in conclusion, Ultimecia is a pretty powerful character, and honestly, the two of the best marksmen that the game's ever seen, they both use her, and she's really good. She's just damn good, especially in the right hand. She's very impressive. And then next up, we have Rinoa. Now, Rinoa is a very interesting marksman. Her toolkit, like Ultimecia, is kind of unorthodox. She's meant to be a very aggressive marksman. She can really play in with the team. She doesn't need to be protected in the back or anything like that. All of her attacks are kind of short range. She does have some high priority attacks as well. Her dash attack is pretty good where she throws Doggo out. She does have some depth as well when it comes to Angelo. She has some stuff. She's okay. I think some of the things that she excels in definitely is her holds. She has good holds on the ground and in the air. And also her EX skill is kind of nuts. So when she does Angel Wing, this gives her an entirely new kit. This allows her to do projectiles that are high durability quite fast. She beats pretty much every other marksman in the game, including Yuna and Golbez. She's like Golbez Dragon on crack, honestly, when she has Angel Wing. She has better holds, better priority. She's just ridiculous. Also, Apocalypse gets like another ring of range. So I think it goes from like 2.5 to 3.5. She's one of those characters, not unlike Shantotto, that has a search HP that has short range, but she can glide during it. Most HP attacks are static, which means that you sit still during it. But moving around, you can imagine, is a safer option. So some of the ups and downs of Angel Wing is that you cannot be buffed at all. So if you're bleeding, Angel Wing will decrease about, I think it's like 1,000 points of your health while you're in it. So you can't really use HP regen at all. You cannot be buffed. You cannot be debuffed. So if you need to use something like teleport, you really can't. You have to kind of fight it out. You got to be careful with that. But it does make you extremely powerful for a short window of time. But I think without it, she's like mid-high tier. With Angel Wings, she's like probably the best marksman in the game, but she only has it for a limited time and it has its clear drawbacks as well. So the thing with Rinoa is I think she's marksman better left off until you've kind of learned some of the easier ones, because you really kind of you got to be on it when it comes to Rinoa, because she has a very different playstyle than the majority of the other marksmen. And then moving on, we have Terra. Now, Terra is one of those characters that has a very, very high ceiling. Now, the barrier to entry, I think, is a little higher than most other marksmen because she doesn't really have good self-defense tools. And I think that she needs a team to really be actively trying to look out for her and work for her. Her defensive options are not that great. So here's the thing with Terra. Every like few seconds or so, you'll see that she has a white whirl around her. This is charged and uncharged attacks. In her base form, she has uncharged attacks, which are just like traditional projectiles are not that strong. These are normally good for like holding, if you need to hold for your teammate or something like that. Her standard neutral brave is really good. Back brave in the air, flare is really good as well. Her standard neutral brave is quite good. Her back brave in the air is good as well to hold people. And then she just has an entirely different kit once she has charge. Now, once she has charge, none of these attacks really hold. These are meant to do a lot of damage to really disrupt the field. Now, when she has charge, some of the best attacks that she has is Charge Fire, which is her neutral brave on the ground. This thing is absurd. Back in the day, you used to be able to just use this and build killing nonstop. It goes in the air. It has terrific tracking. It does a lot of damage. It's just absurdly good. Then you have Charge Ice, which is also pretty good. Now, Charge Ice is a bit of a delay attack, so do it and then it'll kind of spawn off. So that's a good way to kind of have multiple, opponents being put in check at the same time. Uncharge Ice is pretty good too, but it's kind of slow moving, and she's kind of like static while she does that also, even though she is gliding. She's really slow. You can give a punish doing that. And then for her other charge attack, she has, I think her best defensive option on the ground is going to be Back Brave on the ground, which is Charge Tornado. It's really hard to kind of interrupt that, honestly, because it has a massive vertical hitbox as well. So you got to be careful about how you approach to that. And then her only real option in the air for defense is going to be her Air Forward Brave, which shoots a bolt of electricity, which isn't really that good. And if you whiff, you're boned. It's not good. She is a character that I probably would recommend buying on, because when she gets trapped, it's pretty bad. So she's definitely a definite for teleport. Would strongly recommend having Shiva for both her and Yuna. There's just some characters that just do better with their EX skills. Trance, her EX skill, is quite crazy. It puts her into her Esper form, and it decreases her cooldown for all her charge attacks, so she can spam her charge attacks consistently. It's actually quite ridiculous, actually. She becomes a completely different character. And then also on top of that, her range for her HP attack, which I was going to get to in a minute. Her HP attack that you want to use is Meteor. Everything else is ass. No reason to use anything else, honestly, unless you're trying to use gimmicks. Her increases the range of Meteor to like absurd proportions. You can like literally clip people with Meteor. I want to say like close to 4 rings away. Like 4, it's just like really insane. And it's good for interrupting. It's good for it's a terrific attack. Just be aware of the charge partitioning that she has to go through, and you can excel with her, but she probably is one of the hardest characters to use at the highest level because she just needs a lot of defense. Even, I don't want to say more than Golbez, but kind of more than Golbez, because if he has Dragon, he can defend himself pretty well. But without Dragon, he's just, you know what I mean? And people really won't bother you if you don't have Dragon, honestly. So the question is, what does a Vanguard do? The Vanguards are essentially like the bodyguards for the other classes, more specifically the actual Marksmen. It's your responsibility to help keep the Marksmen safe away from the speed. So if the speed's entire prerogative is to go after the Marksmen, you are there to be the stop sign, okay? You are the brick wall between them and the Marksmen. And while this role is extremely easy, I always found it to be quite easy, especially post-patch now, a lot of people really don't play it well. And what I mean by that is that you'll find that a lot of people kind of just play super aggro. They want to just play really in. They want to play like assassins, essentially is the best way to put it. They want to play super duper in, and that's not really the way this role is designed to be played in. So your entire prerogative is to essentially be the bodyguard. You are the guard dog for the Marksman. You are the guard dog for the speed. Now, you can't be everywhere at once. If your team especially is playing very separated, you have to pick who you're going to be with. If you have to pick one, please pick the Marksman, because the Marksman is almost defenseless against a really good assassin. So if you want to always try and be about a ring to a ring and a half away from the Marksman at any given time, your responsibility is to interrupt the speed attempting to attack your Marksman. One thing that you'll quickly come to find out, especially if you're playing Marksman, is that there's not a lot of great Vanguards in the community. Vanguard players tend to kind of just want to run wild. They want to go play super aggressive, and that's not really what they're designed for at all. There's 2 that are exceptions, which we'll talk about here in a moment, but honestly, they're designed to sit back, spoon feed setups, and that's really your core goal. If you can prevent the speed from attacking your Marksman, and then also set them up for big damage, you've done pretty much 90% of your job, and you're playing better than 90% of the other Vanguards out there. A couple things about Vanguards is that they have the slowest jump speeds, they have the slowest step speed, so you are the most vulnerable if you get caught. you really can't get out of situations. You can try and mash with some characters, but it's really hard for you to get out of situations. You can't really mash like a speed, and you don't have teleport and stuff like that for marksmen, so you kind of have to eat a lot of it. So you have to be super careful about your positioning, because if you get isolated, it's harder for you to get out of situations than other characters. So one thing about being a Vanguard is once you begin a combo string, you cannot be interrupted by anything other than other Vanguards or HP attacks, which is a pretty crazy change that they made, an unnecessary change I would say that they made, but it makes you a god on the field. Once you start hitting somebody, they have to press square unless it's another Vanguard. And if they don't have another Vanguard, you pretty much have free picking. You can do whatever the hell you want, honestly. But be careful, because, you know, all the same rules apply. You can get punished easier, stuff like that. So a few bullet points about Vanguards is that they have the longest ranges for melee attacks. You'll see that their melee attacks go quite far. They do also have wave HP attacks. And one thing is that their HP attacks, sometimes, depending on which one you have, can be a little harder for them to cash out, just because there's a bigger commitment when it comes to some of their HP attacks. So keep that in mind as well. So now we talked about what you're supposed to be doing out there as a Vanguard. Again, let's go through them easiest to hardest, okay? So starting with some of the easiest, the three that I think if you are looking to learn Vanguard, the three that you need to try and learn is Cloud of Darkness, Cloud, as well as Warrior Light. This is the fundamental holy trinity when it comes to Vanguards. So let's start with Cloud of Darkness. Cloud of Darkness is kind of like the Ryu of this game. She has a very solid projectile game, but she can be very good up close as well. Cloud of Darkness has a lot of tools, and I think her strongest tools are her projectiles. She can really play quite passively, but when it's time to go in, she has the ranges to do so as well. Her projectiles on the ground and in the air are static, so be careful about that. You can definitely get searched, but they can actually trade with some marksman projectiles. They have pretty high durability, so keep aware of that. She has great holds. I love her holds. In the air, she has great ranges. On the ground, great holds as well. Her forward brave on the ground and in the air is very understated. A lot of people don't use it, but it has tremendous range. You can let her literally catch people slipping all the time when you hit them with that. So her EX skill, when she floods herself with darkness, is actually pretty impressive. It allows her to get one projectile priority level up on projectiles, which is very good, and it even makes her more impressive on the field. And it also increases her knockback by about 0.5, so you'll see that definitely when you're in that form. Now, if you press triangle again after you're already flooded with darkness, you will do zero form particle beam, which is like a gigantic wave. This thing is ridiculous. So for Cloud of Darkness, recommended HP attacks are kind of all of them. She doesn't really have a bad HP attack. Even the ones that you might think are gimmicky are actually really good in the right hands. The ones I would start with are going to be anti-air. This goes pretty high vertically as well, and it also has a bit of glide. Pretty good HP attack, good for setups. And then the one that most people tend to use is wide angle particle beam. This is just like the rug pull. It is just insane. There's so many times you'll hit two people with this because the hitbox is just massive. And pretty much all of them are really good. She has a really good HP selection. Now moving on, we have the golden boy for the Final Fantasy series, the mascot, Mr. Cloud Strife himself. Now this is a very definition of low skill, barrier of entry, but high cap. Everybody plays Cloud, so everybody knows how to fight against Cloud, but that doesn't make him any less good in my opinion. His main gimmick is that he can charge his normals, which essentially gives you free 50/50s. Pretty much all his normals can be charged, and when they're charged, they go further. So you see here, this is charged, this is uncharged, this is what it looks like. And what this does really is it forces a lot of 50/50 situations. He can really stop right in front of you, start charging, then you have to guess. Now, realistically, your reactions really have to be good if you're just going to try and react to it in real time. Normally, you just have to kind of guess. You have to wait and see if he's going to do what he's going to do, because if he whiffs, you can potentially punish him. But if you just try and time it, based off what you see with your eyes, you'll probably get hit most of the time. It's just too fast, honestly. So this character is the definition of easy 50/50s. He can just dash up to you at any point and really just start charging. You got to kind of take that. Unless you're melee or unless you have something to mash with, you kind of have to just take that. And it's really hard to react to because you never know when he's going to let the button go. There is a max amount of time before the attack will just perform itself, but it's longer than you would expect, honestly. Now, for some strange reason, his HP attack can also be charged, which has a massive hitbox that's hard to get out of. Now, Cross Slash used to be way more broken than it is now. It used to be insane. Like, it was really hard to punish, really hard to interrupt. They made it a bit more reasonable, but if a Cloud just jumps up to you and just starts charging, your best option is try and mash out of it, or try and double jump if you can super quick. He might even still clip you if you do that, but if you're a marksman, definitely teleport. Now, Cloud's EX is Limit Break. Now, when he gets Limit Break, his charges are much faster. He can charge much faster, and his HP attacks become uninterruptible. One of the scourge of this game is Limit Break. Omni Slash, which what essentially it does is it takes the normal version of Omni Slash and adds many more hits onto it, of course, poster boy privilege. And it can really result in a lot of breaks, a lot of high damage, stuff like that. If you have Mighty Strikes on, they're rended, you can probably get like, close to 1,000 maybe damage on that. Depending on if everything's good. Maybe not 1,000, maybe like 600 to 800. I'm not going to calculate it, but you'll do quite a bit of damage, I would say, for sure. But honestly, Cloud is just baby's first Vanguard. There really is. That is a fundamental Vanguard that you should learn. He's really good about teaching the ropes. He has good projectiles, good normals, excellent holds. I love his holds. He just has it all. He is a poster child for a reason. And with Cloud, I would definitely say make sure you are picking Shiva. Having more limit break just makes him stupider. And one thing I want to note about Cloud is make sure you are not playing Shoot Cloud. A lot of people, because his projectiles are so good, they will sit so far back and keep chucking finishing touches. He's good at that, but you're only using a quarter of his kit. Make sure you're in there and doing what you need to do, because Cloud will be so far back chucking projectiles, his other two teammates will be so far ahead of him, it just won't work out. So just be aware of that. And then next up we have Warrior of Light. Now Warrior of Light is like the most vanilla character in this game. He's not really fun to watch, but he's incredibly good. He's that boring character that you're like, oh, I don't want to watch this, you know what I mean? But when he's cooking, it is crazy in that kitchen, like for real. His entire kit is very defensive. He is probably one of the best defensive marksmen in the game, probably the most defensive marksman in the game. For one key reason, Shield of Light. Essentially what this does, any projectile or any melee attacks, any bravery attacks that you throw at him, he will parry, and if you do a melee attack, this will temporarily stun you and like knock you back. Which will allow him to confirm quite easily. And if you throw multiple projectiles at him, this will level it up so that he gets to like level 3 or so. And he's quite insane. Like his shield he can do like defensive attacks back at you. He just becomes better and better. Now this character has some of the best setups in the game. His air bravery string is so good, man. When used with search HPs, it is so good to pull off. And then even his forward brave, the shield snatch. So this character's toolkit is insane. Might not be very flashy, but it gets the job done like 1,000,000%. Really, if you just want to stick to the marksman, like just like peanut butter and jelly, you want to be right next to him all the time, you really will have no problems when it comes to Warrior Light. Good awareness, make sure that you're parrying as you're supposed to. He has good HP attacks as well. Some silly ones like Ultimate Shield, but probably the recommended ones are Croissant Saber, we call it Croissant Saber, as well as Bitter End. Bitter End has completely brave invincibility, so if somebody's running at you, you can easily turn around and do Bitter End. It's really good, and they do have plus versions as well. The more you're leveled up with your stacks from Shield of Life from your parries, he's just a terrific character. And the cherry on top is going to be his EX skill, Holy Chain. Holy Chain essentially is a provoke against all members that are within the AoE radius. So if you can get all 3 team members, enemy team members, to get within this actual AoE, and you can get all 3 of them in Holy Chain, they can only target you. But be aware, if people know that you're approaching and you're in the air, it can easily be countered. And once you get HP attacked, it automatically breaks the Holy Chain. So be careful about when you choose to do that. It's really quite good. And then moving on, the best melee character in this game, Snow. Now, I just got done playing Final Fantasy 13 earlier this year, and my opinion about him changed. But then I booted this game up again, and my opinion just changed right back. This character is pretty broken, unfortunately. His entire gimmick is the more he is damaged, the more he upgrades himself. He gets Seath levels, if you ever played the game. And when he gets these Seath levels, he becomes more and more unreasonable. So not only is he rewarded for essentially playing bad, every time he gets down, he gets rewarded. He becomes more powerful, which is just an absolutely insane mechanic in any type of competitive fighting games. Why would you reward somebody for playing badly? But anyways, he has everything. He is considered a short-range specialist, but that really becomes problematic, and for the following reasons. You would think it's a large arena fighting game. This guy only has short-range attacks. He has barely any projectiles. But the problem is that it never, you're not really utilizing the whole arena. At some point, the neutral's going to break, and then everybody's going to be pretty close to each other. And when I say this man wins every single interaction, he wins pretty much every single interaction, even against a class that's supposed to beat him, Marksmen. He completely dominates Marksmen for a lot of reasons, mostly because he has pretty relatively fast normals for a Vanguard, or Brave in the Air is just flat out unreasonable. I don't know any other way to put it. It's really fast, it has minimal startup, and it goes pretty far. And the more he's upgraded, once he gets to level 3, it is just like a wall of poise. It's really hard to challenge, like I mentioned before. You have to kind of HP him. He wins pretty much every interaction. He has an anti-air attack. He has a dunk attack. He just has pretty much everything. He has an answer in every single situation. Of course, some of this does come down to player skill, but this is one character that pretty much has a wide gamut. It's really hard for him to lose unless you are just throwing or your teammates are just letting you die, honestly. His EX skill, like I mentioned, when he goes down, he gets upgraded to Seath levels. Now, he can use an attack called Damnation. If he holds down the EX button and he charges it, it releases like a black pillar wave. Now, once it gets to level 3, that does HP damage. But even in level 1 and 2, it's really good for 50-50s because it's unblockable. Like, you needed that. And when it comes to HP attacks for Snow, all of them are pretty good, but the standout one definitely is Brutal Bash. It just has insane range, insane tracking. It's just way too good. And if you're level 3, you can hold it for bravery damage. What were they cooking? What were they thinking with this guy? He just has it all. I do personally like Sovereign Fist, but it's not nearly as good as something like Triumphant Grasp, but we'll get to that later. So with Snow, he has a couple of hard counters, but the thing is that you have to play exceptionally well with those characters, and he can just play middle of the road and so excel and sometimes beat you. I would say his bad matchups are things like Cloud of Darkness, a really good Garland, a really good Cloud, and a really talented Sephiroth, because Sephiroth does have the range on him, but if you whiff, it's over. We'll get to that here in a second. So Snow is the best melee in this game. He just has it all. Yes, he can do his job really well. He can be very aggressive. He just beats all the classes. He's a god. Nothing else to say. Then moving on to medium tier, we have the second best melee in the game, Mr. Ardyn. The last DLC character, I don't know what it is with DLC, but companies, they feel like DLC characters need to be cracked out, and then they dropped this character and then just said, we're out, peace. We're not rebalancing this guy. And he's pretty good. So when it comes to Ardyn, his biggest thing is that he can do everything better than everybody else, except for maybe Snow in some situations. He has terrific holds. He has great normals. Yes, his HP pool is one of the best in the games. So the thing with Ardyn, honestly, is that he is just also kind of fundamentally broken. He breaks a lot of the rules of the game, especially when it comes to the Vanguard class. He can be extremely aggressive. Sometimes it feels like he's a speed. Like he can just be everywhere at once. It feels like he doesn't have the same rules that other Vanguard does, even though he does on paper. He just feels like he doesn't have to follow them a lot of the time. The main thing with Ardyn is that he has everything. Just like Snow, he has better answers for situations than a lot of other characters in this class or characters in the game, honestly. He has good normals, great holds, decent projectiles. This Vortex Tornado on the ground is really good for neutral game. He has a hold in the air with glide, a projectile hold. Like, why? It looks cool as hell too, and it's called Dark Faraga. You know, it has a sick ass name too. This guy just has everything, honestly. One of the best outfits in the game too. So let me get into why he's so problematic. His EX skill. Shadow Step essentially makes him completely intangible, and when I mean intangible, he cannot be hit by anything. This is summon attacks, HP attacks. Once he's in his shadow form, he is essentially a ghost. You cannot hit him. This allows him to just pretty much skip neutral. When he has it, he can just straight up just go up to somebody and target dash. And that leads us to the second problem he has, is that his HP kit is absolutely broken. A lot of his stuff is based off of timing, so you have to step it correctly. And his timing is very particular, especially on PS4. For some reason, it'll seem like you always get hit by his stuff. And that leads us to the second reason why Ardyn's kind of broken, his HP kit. His HPs are all really damn good, probably up there for top 3 HP kits in the entire game, and they all have very particular timing. You have things like Royal Retribution, which is a parry that still comes out. If he parries it properly, you know, automatically will go through, but even if he doesn't, it can be used as a combo ender as well. It's insane. It's like Scintilla on crack for some reason, and it's pretty fast as well. And then he has Phantasmal Spirit, which is the shortest wave in the game, but it's really fast, and it also does bravery damage. Now his passive skill is getting the Armature Swords. You can do this by performing specific attacks, his ground dash attack, this one right here, as well as his dunk. These two will allow you to build the sword stacks, and what they essentially do is they will do bravery attack on each normal. You can't pick and choose when you want to use it. It will automatically use it. And on HP attacks, it will also do bravery damage, which is completely unnecessary. I don't know why they decided to give that to him, but he will be a damage output machine. He is really good at confirming. He's really good at just HP kits. He's just insane, honestly. His kit is so powerful. And one of the biggest offenses when it comes to Ardyn is his air dash attack. You see this dash punch right here? It's impossible to escape. It's like Zidane still. And it has, it's a Vanguard, so it has Vanguard priority as well. It's just insane. So no one can ever run away from him. He is just too good. This character is insane. I think he does work really well with something like Odin as well as Shiva, just because his EX is good. Now, Shadow Step doesn't last for too long, but when you have it, you are essentially God. You can skip neutral, you can do whatever you want, as long as you don't come out of that form. You have to be dashing. Probably the only real counter to it is going to be Enfeeble, because you can't dash while on it, so keep that in mind. And then for HP attacks, for Ardyn, pick one. All of them are good. None of them are bad at all. I personally like Phantasmal quite a bit, but he doesn't have a bad option when it comes to HP attacks. He is completely broken. And then moving on, let's talk about the one and only Jack Garland. Now, this guy is the antithesis of Warrior Light. Where Warrior Light is pretty defensive, this man is a bull in the china shop. This is a freight train of pain, and that is mostly because of his EX skill. The way that his passive works is called Deranged Soul. The more he hits you, the more leveled up he gets. It goes from level 1 to level 2. When you see this scarlet red cloak on this man, he's one of the best characters in the game. He gets increased ranges on all of his attacks. And when I say increase, I mean increase, dude. Like those attacks are going very far. You will clip people that are very far away. He becomes just ridiculous. Now, his normals are pretty good, but they're not like Snow and Ardyn or anything like that. They're pretty committal heavy. Like they seem to have like a lot of animation frames and stuff like that. And you'll get punished even if you don't complete the string. In particular, his air neutral attack is pretty commitment heavy. If you whiff that, you are going down. Now, one of the better neutral tools that he has is called Chain Cast. If you're in the air and you do Forward Brave, this would do a Chain Cast. It has a pretty good vertical measure. This is good for clipping people underneath you or people that are on top of you and stuff like that. It's a good kind of non-committal way to kind of start building your stacks. The entire idea here is to build your stacks, but do it safely. The more you get, the higher your stacks get, you become unfuckwittable. No one can really contest you on the field. Even like the broken characters like Snow and Ardyn, they gotta kind of respect you. Now, one of his better holds for sure is gonna be Grounded Forward Brave. Once this thing is leveled up, you will yoink and snatch people that are very far away. It is absolutely ridiculous. He just has it all, except for HPs. That's one area that Garland just falls flat, honestly. The go-to one is Earthquake, but it's kind of wonky. On PC, it's a little more stabilized. On PS4, you'll get rollback and janky shit all the time. He has some other ones that are all based off the elements. The other ones are okay. Cyclone used to be really good, but they nerfed it. Now it doesn't go nearly as far, and the tracking's been somewhat neutered. But it's okay if you want to try and clip somebody or play a bit more. On small stages, Blaze is incredibly good. But just be careful. If you hold it too long, you can easily get punished by a search or other HP attacks that can cut through it. And then Tsunami's just bad. Don't pick Tsunami. I don't think it's good at all. And then the main reason that I absolutely love Garland is he has a win button. Now, we just call it the grab, all right? So if you press triangle, you can do Deranged Soul. Essentially what this is a grab. Now, even if they block it, it doesn't matter because you can hold this for so long that they're guaranteed to get hit. But on the downside, you are also extremely vulnerable. You can get punished as well. But essentially, it's like a win button. If you can catch somebody, you know what I mean, and you can confirm it, your marksman or somebody else has high brave, it's really hard to dodge. It has pretty good tracking. It plows through pretty much any magic attacks or anything like that. But it is pretty predictable if your enemy team knows what you want. But it's a good way also to build stacks. Maybe you just want to get, you don't want to do the full charge. It's a good way to maybe build Deranged Soul level 1 or so. But it is incredibly good if you have an aware marksman. It is just a win condition. That's one reason I like bringing him along, is because he can force a situation. A lot of characters can't do that. And then moving on, let's talk about Chocolate Daddy Vayne. Now, when Vayne first got in this game, I was looking at the trailer and I was like, this character's not really impressive. And then there was one man out there that changed my opinion on it, Mr. Pigeon Senpai, one of the best Vanguard players we've ever had in this community. He really demonstrated what this character is all about, honestly. And his main things is kind of just doing holds. That's his main thing. His entire gimmick is that he can reposition the third tack of his bravery string, and this can direct where the opponent goes flying, either to the left, to the right. And if you're in the air, you can either choose to dunk them all the way down. There's a lot of different versatility that comes to it. But in my honest heart of hearts, and I like this character and I use him a lot, that's not strong enough of a gimmick because in some situations it's useless if you're not close to a wall or you don't have a teammate that's working off you properly. And it really comes at the cost of a pretty solid kit. His kit is pretty uneven. First off, I think that Vayne is better in the air than he is on the ground. His air neutral goes pretty far. It will clip people all the time. They never think they're going to get hit by it. because I never think I'm going to get hit by it. It goes further than you expect. But it has a ton of recovery, and if it whiffs, you're toast. There's really no other way to put it. But the main reason you want to be in the air with him is because he has the Dragon Punch in the sky, which is air up brave, as well as air down brave. They pretty much allow him to be unfuckwittable. And when it comes to verticality, nothing's going to beat that. Some like higher priority things might trade with it, but it's pretty fast. It will catch people sleeping all the time. It's good for 50-50s. It's a pretty good damn attack. But on the flip side, if Vayne is on the ground, he is kind of buns. His attacks feel like they take forever to come out. And I'm sure they're equitable with other, frame startups or other Vanguards, but you'll know when you play him. It just feels like he is so damn slow on the ground. And then the other super attack he has on the ground is really slow, and it doesn't have good tracking. This attack right here is trash. It never hits anybody, and it's very punishable. So it's like no reason to use it at all. On the ground, he does have back brave, mock wave. It's okay. It's decent. His projectile game really isn't that good. Really, when they were announcing Snow, I really had that Pikachu face on that whole time because I was like, this is the rest of Vayne's kit. They gave him they gave Snow the rest of Vayne's kit because Vayne always felt like he's missing something. Now on the HP side, his HPs are pretty good. I would say that the main one is Contempt. This is a charge-based HP attack, so even if they try and step, easy to punish. You'll catch a lot of people just by dashing up, and they'll step. It's easy cash out every single time. The other ones, not that great, honestly. I really wouldn't recommend using the rest of them. If you want to be serious, you care about your team actually succeeding, I wouldn't recommend using the rest of them. Except for maybe Avoidable Will on small stages is fine. Now, Force of Will seems like it should be good, but with the way Marksmen's are, like, you're never going to get that off. You're going to get interrupted before you can complete it. It's just, that's the way it goes. And honestly, that's the same way for every, HP attack that has a long string, except for Gabranth, and we'll talk about that. You're going to get interrupted against players that know what's going on. They know. They've been in hundreds of matches. They know how to interrupt that attack. So I would stick with Contempt, honestly. And then for his EX skill, Writ of Conquest, I think, is okay. It really plays into him being more of a team player, more of a defensive player. What it does is, there's 3 different levels to it. If you get to level 3, it essentially buffs yourself and it buffs any teammates within the AoE. And it's pretty solid, but it's not enough to really swing the pendulum. I've never won a match and say, God damn, that was because of Writ of Conquest. That's never happened. It's good to keep momentum pushing forward, but it's just like him on the nutshell. He's just kind of underwhelming in the very end. So Vayne, I think, is pretty solid. He's okay. Nothing to write home about, but if you play him right, you can get some work done, honestly. And then to cap us off for Vanguards, let's talk about the hard Vanguards. So start with Cecil. Now, Cecil is, on paper, you might look at him like, hey, he doesn't seem that difficult. The main thing with Cecil, his EX skill allows him to switch between Dark Knight and Paladin, which if you played the game, you understand that makes sense. So Dark Knight, let's start with that, is your neutral base form. This will allow you to access to a lot of really good projectiles. His dash attack, this giant orb right here that he releases, it has pretty good tracking. It will knock people down to the ground, which you can combo from. It has a lot of good stuff, honestly. And this right here we call the musket, his ground forward brave. The dark bullet, essentially this fires a pretty fast, pretty decent projectile, and it can also wall crush, but it knocks people back a hell of a far way. And it's really good. It builds a lot of brave. One of the best attacks, I think, for melees for sure. And then on the ground, his back brave is like a search bravery attack. Nothing to write home about. You probably get search if you do it too much. But it's really good for neutral. So this form is meant to be played on the ground. This character should never be in the air for any reason, honestly. Just unless you absolutely need to be. His attacks, his normals are really fast as well, but they're not really good for holds. They're okay. They're nothing to write home about. This character should just be spamming projectiles, honestly, and just trying to build brave. Now, when you want to be aggressive, this is when you want to switch to Paladin. Now, Paladin is much harder to use than Dark Knight, and a lot of people don't have a good Paladin, myself included. The reason that Paladin is hard is because, like some characters in this game, a lot of his best attacks are kind of commitment heavy. Honestly, his hold, his standard bravery string goes on for a very long time, which is good if you have an aware marksman that can confirm, but it's really bad if you keep finishing your string and getting punished. But he's very dominant in the air, just like Vayne. He has a down brave attack, which essentially is a dive attack, and then once he finishes it, it pushes him back up. It is deceptively fast, and this is a really good way to build brave. And it's hard for people to react to it for some reason. And then up Brave on the ground is pretty fast as well. His attacks are really fast, I would say. In Paladin, they're deceptively fast. A lot of people get clipped by for some reason. He just has a lot of good tools. So if you want to be more of a team player and try and hold for your marksman or stuff like that, or just be more in the fray, you want to switch to Paladin, but you need to be super careful because all of his attacks are very punishable against the enemy marksman if they have eyes. If they're paying attention, you will get punished a lot. And also Searchlight is pretty good for breaks. It doesn't really do any type of like actual hit stun, but it's a good way to build. It does do bravery damage, so keep that in mind. Now let's talk about his HP attacks. So his HP kit is pretty good, slightly unorthodox. If you're in Dark Knight, if you're committed to just kind of play the Dark Knight strategy, the best one for sure is going to be Dark Flame. Now this is the best wave attack in the game. It's so good that every time you do it, it actually costs you 400 HP. It's that damn good. Now, the big drawback with this is if you're just spamming it, you're going to be on 1 HP in no time, or if you're already bleeding, you got to kind of make the risk. Do I go for this HP attack? You know what I mean? Do I try and risk it for the Trisket? But you got to be careful. You know what I mean? You don't want to be a liability on the field. And then Tenebrous and Luminous Blast. Tenebrous Blast is a slow-moving HP ball, and then Luminous Blast is the exact opposite. It's a fast-moving HP ball. So they kind of have their, you know, utility, I would say. They're okay. I mean, if you want screen control, but they're easily searchable. They're easily punishable. So keep that in mind. The best melee-based attack that he has for HPs is going to be Soul Eater. It's pretty fast, does decent HP damage, and has pretty interesting tracking as well. So, you know, overall, Cecil is pretty strong. I would say he's consistently been like at least top upper elo when it comes to Vanguards, but he's pretty hard to use, honestly. He's good, but there's not really that many good Cecils. And if you see one, you'll be like, God damn, this character's insane. But you got to really work for every bit of that, honestly. You got to know both forms. You got to know what buttons to press. It really comes down to your awareness in the end. And then moving on, we have probably my top 3 favorite character in the game, the other poster boy for Square Enix, Mr. Sephiroth. Now, Sephiroth is the only real character in this game outside of Squall that actually requires any measure of execution. Now, he has some of the best ranges in the game, probably tied with like Cloud of Darkness, honestly, for Brave, but he is incredibly slow. He is one of the slowest characters in the game, and if you whiff with the character, it's worse than Garland. It is lights out. You're cooked. There's no way around it. The thing with Sephiroth is he has a mechanic referred to as JDC. We just call this Japanese dash cancel. We're not even sure what the real name of it is anymore. We've been calling it that for 7 years. The main thing is there's specific points at the end of your bravery strings where if you press dash, it will allow you to cancel the recovery frames of that bravery sequence. So this will allow Sephiroth to do things that no other character in the game can. You can pressure, unlike any other character in the game can. You do have that lovely Vanguard poise, so it's really hard for them to interrupt you as well. But on the flip side, if you whiff, you have a ton of recovery. So this is an expert tier character for sure. This would be probably one of the last characters that you learn. He's really fun, and he's really rewarding once you get it clicking. Once you start getting those JDCs down, you're hearing that noise over and over and over again, you know that you're cooking. It's really good. Now, I will say that the timing for his JDCs are completely different from PS4 to PC. On PS4, I swear to God, I couldn't hit them for shit. Maybe like 40%, and it just has to do with the inherent lag for the PS5, like I told you. It's just not a good port, honestly. But you go to PC, and I'm like at least an 80 to 90% ratio. And most people on PC that play Sephiroth, even people that aren't pros with him, I'm talking, they might play him once a month. It's pretty easy to hit the JDCs on there. It's just more accurate timing, closer to the arcade timing probably. But once you get a hold of his JDC mechanics, you'll start to understand what attacks he uses. His forward brave on the ground and in the air is really good. Decent range. It's not chargeable, which I think they should have made it chargeable. He would have been completely stupid then. It has decent range. It's a good cut tool. It's a good way to interrupt people, but it is pretty predictable. People will know how to deal with that, honestly. His dash attack is not that great. His dash attack used to be much better, but it got nerfed a lot. Now it's kind of a little bit of a risk, honestly. It's good to kind of build pressure, but it whiffs. You're in a bad situation, honestly. He doesn't really have much in the way of projectiles. Nothing to write home about that. Zanchin in the air is a good tool to interrupt without committing. One of his better attacks is Hell's Gate. It is a vertical plunging attack. You know, we all know that, of course. But the JDC, when you hit the ground, is hard. It's pretty difficult timing. A lot of people mess it up. But if you can learn that, you become quite good, actually. It opens up a lot of opportunities for you. Now, one thing with Sephiroth is that his holds really aren't that good. If you want to try and hold Sephiroth, you should do 3 attacks. 1, 2, 3. Then your marksman should press square. Now, when it comes to Seph, really just, you know, the holds are the wall rushes. When I wall rush somebody, just go ahead and take the HP. Because he wants to complete his strings. It's not really advantageous for him to do 1 or 2 hits or something like that, because you want the JDC to continue momentum. So if you are trying to hold, you have a ton of recovery. It seems like you're way more vulnerable than other Vanguards for sure. So just keep that in mind. You know, that's going to be a big part of Sephiroth as well. He's kind of a selfish character, to be quite honest, but he's really fun as well, you know. But you really have to know what's going on. And I always, you know, as I mentioned, I strongly suggest you mastering Scintilla. Recommended HP attacks. I'm going to go ahead and say this first. This is like a B or C tier character, probably like a B tier character. If you learn Scintilla and you master it, it is a A tier character. Even the best Sephiroths in the world, at a certain point you're going to implode, because it is fundamentally a bad character. I don't care how good you are. At some point you're going to implode. But if you learn Scintilla, you eliminate a lot of his issues. The big issues with Sephiroth is that he has a lot of bad matchups, and especially against a class he's supposed to dominate. He's supposed to be able to beat speeds, but he loses a lot of them, especially the ones that have like good verticality. He has shit verticality. But if you have Scintilla can parry any bravery attack, so you can use that if they're trying to put you in a 50-50 or trying to put you in a blender or something like that. It creates a whole new avenue for him. Now, if you don't want to use that because, you know, timing and such like that, or you don't want to risk it, because if you press Scintilla and you miss, you are quite vulnerable. You are going to pay for that. Now, you could also use Heartless Angel, which is pretty good. It does doom on the opponent if you hit them. And you can also use Octaslash. Octaslash is pretty good, but the thing is, it's easily interruptible. It goes on for so long, you're probably going to get interrupted. And then don't use Black Materia. Just don't use Black Materia, okay? Just don't do it. Don't be that guy, unless it's a meme lobby. Don't be that guy. Now, Sephiroth's EX skill is Genova, and it's kind of like Vayne's. Nothing really to write home about. It slows down the movement speed of the enemy. So if you have Odin plus Genova, you can definitely run down anybody in the game. But also, you know, his approach is pretty linear. If they're above him, he can't really do anything. So you have to be careful when you use Genova, because a lot of people put Genova on and they think, you know, oh my god, they can't run. Yeah, they can still probably dodge. You know, it's harder for them to dodge, but if they know Sephiroth's timing, he can still kind of get out of it. It's okay. It's not one of my favorite EXs. I don't think it's that game changing. It's okay. I really only think it should be used during summon phase, honestly, or unless you're really trying to close out a stock and they're trying to run from you. Really the only time for that. And then moving on, let's talk about Firion. Now, Firion, for some reason, is a character that more people than I ever expected like to play. This character is the antithesis of what I like. I just don't like this character, but I'm not saying he's a bad character. There's a reason that some of the hardest characters are also some of the worst characters in the game. And that's going to be Sephiroth as well as Firion. Now, the thing with Firion is that a lot of Firion players, they like to play Firion in the air. And Firion is the strongest character in the game on the ground. He has the strongest ground game. He has ridiculous extended holds, longer than anybody else in the game outside of maybe Squall. And he can just reset, he can loop, he can break shields in the right hands, he can cook. His holds are so good. As you can see here, you know, there's a sequence, 1, 2, 3, and he can just essentially hold you from very, very far ranges. That axe that he throws, I think that thing goes like 3 rings. I could be wrong, but it is crazy. I've seen this thing hit me from way down the block. You know what I mean? But the thing with that is, of course, there's a downside, and that is if Firion's sitting there trying to do his thing, he can easily be punished by the Marksmen. HP attacks are so prevalent in today's meta, and they're always going to be prevalent in the meta, is that, honestly, you just need to be careful. If you're doing your thing, you should have one eye on the Marksman, making sure you're not going to get punished. That's the main thing. Firion players love to kill themselves for some reason. He's just an incredibly good character, not really too much on the projectile side. Now, in the air, he has a pretty decent like lightning whip that he can use, and it pulls him towards the opponent. Then he can like do a dunk to the ground. But really, he doesn't need to be in the air. He needs to be like in Zelda when you put those iron boots on and you can't move. That's what Firion needs to be. He needs to be on the ground at all times. If you are in the air too much, you are not playing Firion correctly. But this guy should be on the ground 24/7. He has crazy good setups. But the thing with him is that you need to be playing with your marksman. He excels when he is with his marksman because he can hold them. You just set them up. You know what I mean? Set them up, knock them down. Really simple game plan when it comes to Firion. His EX skill, Blood Weapon, is nothing to write home about. It's okay. If you want the details on that, honestly, I can't be. I'm not even going. Now, his EX skill, honestly, I don't really use this character, but it does various buffs and stuff like that. Nothing too game-changing. It's okay. I don't think it's that great, honestly. I've never lost a match and say, God damn, Blood Weapon cooked me right there. Maybe like once in 7 years. It's okay. His HP kit is quite good, actually. They rebalance him, so his direct like melee attack for 8 speeds is going to be Crown of Arms. Goes deceptively far, and it's hard to step if you are already committed to something, and it's a good interrupt tool as well. One of the better waves in the game, Lord of Arms, is pretty good, has good vertical ceiling as well. Then he has one of the fastest searches in the game for some insane reason. Weapon Master is just really quick, actually. It's just insane. So pretty decent HP kit, but the main thing with him is that people don't like to use that character right for some reason, and he ends up stumbling. But I don't really think he's a terrific character. He's usable. That's one thing I love about this game, is that every single character is viable. Some of you just gotta work harder than others. That's just the reality of it. So that'll do it for Vanguard. So in a nutshell, what did we learn today? These characters are essentially your tanks. They can be vulnerable if left exposed, or if they're in a 2v1 situation, they will lose unless you're Snow or Ardyn. You want to stay very close to your marksman. Your responsibility is to protect the marksman. And we'll talk about this in the next section. We'll talk about team comps and neutral and stuff like that. But if you're trying to play in with your speed to protect them, you just need to be careful that your marksman isn't getting, black.com back there, because that's going to be a crazy situation. Just be aware of that. And then moving on, let's talk about assassins. So let's talk about what speeds actually do. Now, it's well known that the speed's job is to hinder the marksman, kind of be on him, right? That's your target, right? But a lot of people tend to play this role in a very suicidal fashion. You want to make sure that you're targeting the marksman, that you're always kind of ever looming presence, but charging in head first is kind of a good way to die. One thing, and a lot of complaints that you get on a lot of people that say, I don't like playing speed, is that they get collapsed on a lot. Essentially, they ran in, and all 3 team members just collapse on them like they're supposed to. What you really want to try and do is just be a presence. You want to pick your spots very carefully. If you are a speed that's going down a lot, or you're dying a lot, trying to, air quotes, do your job, you are actively hindering your team a lot, because you are just throwing, essentially. You need to pick your spots and use your tools appropriately. First thing, when it comes to speeds, the number one thing that you want to use is your verticality. You have more jumps than the other characters in the game, so you want to approach from a vertical fashion. Second thing, every speed has at least one attack that will plow through magic. Essentially, it will allow you to go through their magical attack, and this will allow you to stay safe, approach, not get hit back, and really try and close some ground. Each character has this. They break down the poise magical system a bit more in the tutorial. Definitely check that out. It's also in the attached document. It breaks it down perfectly. But you need to understand what your respective characters is tool, and make sure you're using it appropriately. A lot of people try and use attacks that don't work well on marksmen. Make sure that you are mixing it up. If you always just try and beeline straight for them, they're gonna know what's up. Most of these people, marksman I think is the most played role, so these people know, you know what I mean, how to approach what you want, how to attack them and everything like that. So just make sure you are approaching properly. And if you found that you're struggling, your marksman should be the other character that's helping you. By throwing projectiles at the enemy marksman, they can at least try and make them block, get out of position. This will give you that opportunity to advance. It doesn't need to all be on your shoulders. So just keep that in mind. Starting from the easiest, we have Locke. Now, Locke is a very good speed. He's probably top 3, top 4, honestly. His toolkit is extraordinarily straightforward. You really only have to do one thing when it comes to Locke, and that's going to be dash attack on the ground. If you are grounded and you do dash attack, this will vault the opponent into the air and spike them down. This is a very easy setup, very easy confirm, and it keeps you relatively safe because somebody has to go in the air to try and punish you. And then, like I mentioned, the vertical camera in this game is buttons, so this is like having a whole separate buff. His normals are really good. His EX skill mechanic is Mug, so anytime he goes to actually press triangle, and his cooldown is really good as well. I think it's like 25 seconds or something like that. So it feels like he constantly has his EX. He can steal a variety of different things from the opponents. Some of the best ones of note are Master Scroll, which gives him an extended hold, something like it feels like Army of One or Quick Hit, as well as Soul of Thasma. This gives him like a long hitting projectile. It's a pretty decent hold as well. And he is ridiculous. Outside of actually getting the items, the ability to plow through any magic attack at any given time by pressing triangle, not at any given time, anytime it's up, is very, very strong. He just has it all. One thing of note is in the air, his forward bravery attack, this little moon cycle here, ridiculous. It is incredibly good. It catches people off guard all the time. This character just cooks. He does his job really well, and he can do it very safely. One thing I would note when it comes to Locke is just be careful that you're not like getting drunk with power. If you just start spamming that dash attack nonstop, finally someone's going to know how to punish you. You're going to run across somebody that's, you do the dash attack. Be aware that anytime you finish a string, it is punishable. You will get punished at some point. So if somebody's paying attention to what you're doing, they're going to be like, oh, this guy's going to just keep doing dash attack. You will get clipped. So be aware of that. That being said, Locke's HP kits are pretty good. The ones I personally like are Ruthless Talons. This is a vertical up and down attack. You can command it either up or down. It's really fast. It's really easy to confirm. It's really good. If somebody's trying to chase you, you can turn around and do that real quick. Really hard to react to. Dagger Dance is good. It goes pretty far, so it's kind of hard to punish, and it does bravery attack as well. And then we have the Vortex HP attacks. So Mirage Dance, it puts him into this little like HP vortex, does a bunch of bravery damage, but this is easily interruptible, as you guess, by Marksmen HP attack. So be aware of that. Just be aware of that when you're using it. And then really that's it for Locke. He's a very, very straightforward character. He has standard bravery attacks and stuff like that. One cool thing is that you can do triangle from his EX skill, and then you can also cancel that into other bravery attacks. So you can do like triangle, turn around, do a bravery attack on somebody else. It's really good stuff. He has a lot of stuff in the pot to cook for sure. Probably top tier speed for sure. Use with Shiva for sure. Use him with Shiva, because having that cooldown even slower makes him absurd. And next up we have Tis McGee, Tifa. Now, I'm kind of reconsidering us reading this. I think she should actually be in medium, but we'll keep it here. It doesn't matter. Now, Tis McGee, her entire thing is a bit like Garland and a bit like Ultimecia. Now, her unique EX skill is referred to as Fever Time. The more she hits people, the higher her Fever Time stacks go. It goes all the way up to 2. You notice in a pattern here? Once she gets a Fever Time level 1, she gets a Ice Projectile, which is pretty good for comboing and stuff like that. And then once you get to level 2, you're kind of ridiculous. You get extended holds, additional attacks and stuff like that. So the main issue with Tifa is early game, early neutral game. If you can't find a way to safely get in or to build the stacks, you are one of the worst characters on the field. Now, she does have options. Her neutral brave on the ground and in the air is relatively fast. She has good holds on the ground as well, but you really want to try and utilize her verticality. She has a up twist move, a down twist move. This is good for trying to catch people off guard, and that's a really good way to kind of knock people away, build some pressure, stuff like that. She's pretty good, but obviously when she gets going, she's going to be a freight train. She's like the female speed Garland. She's really, really good. But actually, no, I think she is pretty straightforward. You know what I mean? Her EX skill is slots, and this gives you a passive buff to all your teammates. You obviously want to try and shoot for level 7, but I normally average around 5 or 6, because the longer that you are sitting there, you are completely vulnerable. I have searched people when they're trying to do slots because they got greedy. It's a good way to die or get hit if you don't do it at the right time. You want to try and do it when you're in advantage level for sure. And when it comes to Tifa, Tis McGee, her HP attacks, honestly, that I would recommend are all of them. All of them are really good. Dolphin Blow is a bit like Rough Divide. Very good verticality, good punish tool. And again, you're in the air, so it's hard to punish you. Meteor Drive is pretty good. It is a 3-hit string, but it's pretty punishable because everybody knows we're going to land after it. And then Meteor Crusher, I think, is really good as well. It's an instant HP attack. It's one of the fastest HP attacks in the game, hard to react to, easy to confirm and stuff like that. And you can also press square and hold it down. I'm not really one to hold it down because people will catch on and they know you're going to hold it every time. You're going to get greedy and you're going to get punished. It's a waste of your time and energy. I'd rather take the quick down. And then she has Blazing Fist, which is a little bit of a gimmick, but it's all right. You know, it's okay. Tifa, very, very good character. And then moving on, this is the sleeper top tier. And this is Kain. Now, Kain used to be the scourge of vanilla NT, like back when Shiva was the meta. He was just ridiculously good. Now, when the meta evolved, a lot of people kind of left Kain behind, but he's still as good as he was back then. I'm not going to say even better, his jump got changed a little bit, but his tools are very, very strong. Starting with just his bravery strings. His regular bravery attacks in the air, his 1-2 string is so good because it's like staggered almost. It's like segmented. It gives you those additional frames that you need to be able to confirm if you have like a slower HP attack. And it's easy to set up like frame traps with it also. Kain he has a ton of tools. His bravery strings are really good. He has verticality. He has a way to launch himself in the air. He can, you know, you hear me say this a lot, but there's a lot in the pot when it comes to Kain. He also has projectiles as well. His projectile in the air, he can actually combo off of. I'm telling you, man, people will be sleeping on this character just because I think other characters are much better, you know, but I still have him probably top 5, honestly. He just has a ton of really good tools. And then moving on, his HP kit is also incredibly good. Fang and Claw is probably the recommended one. Fang and Claw does a lot of bravery damage. It's really hard to interrupt it. You have to interrupt it with an HP attack. And then next up, we have the Stupidity, known as Avenger. This, like Bitter End, gives you complete bravery invincibility. Now, one thing to note, when I say bravery invincibility, this means that you can't be hit out of it. You take no hit stun, but this still will reduce your bravery. Just keep that in mind. And then moving on, one of the more annoying ones to deal with is Vanquish. Now, this can be directed either up or down, and it's really good to catch people slipping. It's good. The only one you never want to use is Gungnir. Don't use Gungnir. It's terrible. It's one of the worst HP attacks in the game. Now, his EX skill is really what makes him, I think, sleeper top tier. It's Jump. Now, Jump has a few different levels to it, and once you get to level 3, it allows you to do HP damage. It's like having a surge HP that charges up. You can only use it a few times a match, but it's really good to interrupt situations, really good to punish people, and it's really quite insane that a speed has access to it. I don't know what they were thinking. A speed has access to that for some reason. And it also makes you kind of uncontestable during summon because you can just jump. They can't punish you. Once you jump into the air, you become untrackable. They can't even target you. This character is incredibly good. I think he's a very good beginner character as well. Do not sleep on Kain. Even though he has that weird thing with Rosa, he's redeemable. And then moving on, we have Medium. Now, this is one of the primary reasons it's extremely difficult for me to go back to PS4, and that is called Tidus. Tidus. This character is a scourge of PS4 net play. I tried to play like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to end it. I was close, you know what I mean? It was so bad. This character does not function correctly on PS4. Even when we were playing offline, you know, like a LAN party, it still was a little janky. Like the better the connection gets, the worse he gets. For some reason, his attacks are like filled with rollback frames for whatever reason. He will teleport all over the place. Here's a clip right here from Saren. It's just really bad. Now, once you play on PC or a somewhat stable connection, he actually goes down like maybe a level or 2. He's not nearly as good. His attacks become punishable. He becomes somewhat predictable, even though he's one of the only characters in the game that has actual mix-ups. He can do high lows and that kind of thing, but this character on PC, I don't think is very good. I think he's actually one of the worst characters on PC. His entire kit is based around his dash attack. He has dash attacks on the ground, in the air, and he has one of the best holds in the game when it comes to melee attacks, because he can do this dash attack on the ground, he can do this in the air, and they just hold you for a really long time at a weird angle. He is best used just as a hold bot. If you just want to have him out there doing setups and stuff like that, I think that's where he really excels. His standard bravery attack string is also really good. It's 2 hits, and it's hard to challenge. He can normally mash out of a lot of situations with that. And as I mentioned before, in the air, his dash attacks, he can go low, and he can also go high. So that's a bit of a mix-up. Sometimes it doesn't matter because you're just going to mash anyway. But visually, it's a bit of a mix-up for sure. He just excels at holds. I don't think he really excels at too much else. His HP attack pool is not that great in my opinion. Spiral Cut's probably the safest option. Slice and Dice is kind of same thing with Mirage Dive. It's going to get punished against an aware shoot unless you're doing it on the shoot, of course. And then Jecht Shot is kind of a gimmick. It's funny to watch people get hit by it, but it's very punishable. You know what I mean? It's okay. One thing that he does have is Quick Hit. Now, Quick Hit, not unlike Garland's Grab, it leaves you locked in for an extended period of time. It's an extended hold. We'll refer to these as the triangle buttons. The triangle button for him, he lunges very far vertically, not very much horizontally, honestly. He doesn't have a lot of vertical coverage. So horizontally, he lunges pretty far. He can hold and stuff like that. It's good for a really quick confirm. And if he also does confirm it, it does restore his full dash gauge. But honestly, you would think that this is the best character in the world on PS4. But on PC, I think I've seen this playing for like the last year or so on PC. I think I can count two hands maybe. No, maybe even one hand. The amount of times I've seen Tidus. He's that bad. He's not really that good once a connection clears up. He's not that good, but he's fun. I would say he's pretty fun to play. And then moving on, we have Zidane. I actually just started Final Fantasy IX today. This character is pretty interesting. He used to be the undisputed king of the game back in the day in vanilla. He had so much broken stuff, but he got the rebalancing nerf. He got hit with the bat. And now he's not bad. He's not good. He's kind of middle of the road. He's kind of weird to use. I've tried to use him on and off for years, but I just really can't get into his playstyle. Doesn't make him bad. There's people that do really well with him. And for a few reasons. His dash attack, you really can't run away from him. He has steal, so this will like cause him to lunge forward when he's trying to hit you. So you can't run away from that. And then it puts you in this weird like recovery state, and it's hard for you to tech out of it. He can kind of dash back and put you in the blender really quickly. And then him, like Locke and Tidus, they benefit from the vertical camera. The vertical camera is just like having an assist in Marvel vs. Capcom or any type of assist fighter, you know, Dragon Ball fighters. It is like the best assist you can ever get, because once you have that verticality, people really don't know how to react. It's hard for them to react, honestly, because they can't really see, because the vertical camera is just janky in this game. So he can put you in the blender pretty well. He can set up 50-50s pretty well. His holds are decent, not what they used to be. I think what he actually really shines in is going to be his HP attacks. I love his HP kit. They're all really good. So I'm reading this straight out the document. Essentially what Trance does, I don't really play this character, is I believe it allows him to get like his 50-50s off much easier. The thing is, if you do steal and you mug a lot, like I mentioned, that is his best, that's one of his best attacks, his dash attack, you'll essentially start getting the attributes, just on paper, not in real life, and then it'll allow you to enhance your HP attacks. Now, his HP attacks when they're enhanced are pretty silly. Like free energy, it becomes like a really good 50-50. It's hard, you gotta kind of mash out of that. And then Solution 9 becomes ridiculous. Solution 9 hitbox is crazy. It's hard to punish it. His other HP attacks, Tidal Flame, I personally like. It's a bit like Ruthless Talons. It goes up, goes down, but this one does do bravery damage, which I think is pretty good. I think he's a pretty solid character. He's like a de facto B character. I don't really think too much of him. He's okay. He's all right. But he can give you problems in the right hands for sure. And now we have the expert tier characters for assassins, starting with Squall. I just beat Final Fantasy VIII 2 days ago, and I reached the end of the game and I just felt nothing. It's kind of how I feel about using Squall as well. Squall is a very interesting character. He has a lot of similarities with Firion. Now, as I mentioned before in the Sephiroth section, he's the only other character that has execution in this game. If you press the attack button at the correct time, it will do triggers, which allows him to do more damage. It's okay, even without it. I think his toolkit is really good. Squall really excels at two different things. Number one is holds. His bravery sequence keeps people locked in for an extreme amount of time, which gives other characters, your teammates, many opportunities in order to confirm, but it also, as you can imagine, leaves you as a sitting duck, so keep that in mind. Outside of holds, the other thing that he really excels in is interrupting. He is a cut specialist. What I mean by that is if somebody is trying to like randomly run at your marksman or something like that, you can do dash attack really quick. you can just knock them away. He's really good at that. I think he's really good at going back and protecting the marksman, even though that's not his role. He's really good at protecting the marksman because he has good attacks that hold for a very long time, so he can interrupt as well as hold. And he is probably one of the best speeds when it comes to just purely attacking the marksman. Against a marksman, you kind of can't lose. He has too many different options, honestly, in order for you to be able to lose with him. He is incredibly good at everything. Even on the ground, he's really strong as well. His back brave, this little electricity pillar, is a great hold. You can yoink people out of air, has slight anti-air properties. This character is just really, really good. The main thing with him, just like Firion, you gotta know when to call it. You know what I mean? You gotta know when to not kill yourself. You have to have good awareness. That is going to be a requisite of using characters that have really good holds. You gotta know when to get out. As long as you can do that, I think Squall is quite good. Funny story, maybe about 2 years ago, they were having the anniversary tournament. I want to say maybe the 5th anniversary tournament for NT, and it was between Japan as well as North America. The team that won that was Emperor, Cloud, and Squall, which is completely unorthodox in many ways, but the Squall did so much work, and that really made me a believer of Squall. It really comes down to how you play him, because he has answers for pretty much everything. Now, his unique EX skill is Draw. Now, he can draw specific attributes from each class, like Marksman, Speed, Vanguard, stuff like that. If his teammates are next to him, they will also get buffed. Not really too much to write home about, honestly. It's okay. And then really, when it comes to his HP skills, they're also pretty good. Main ones you want to try and use is Rough Divide. This one is just so good. It has a bit of a delay at the beginning, so if you're against a melee, they can definitely mash you out of it. But against anybody else, they're going to have to take the 50-50. Knowing the timing is half the battle. If you step too early, you're going to get clipped. If you step too late, you're going to get clipped. Faded Circle is one of the fastest HP attacks in the game, and it's good for kind of crowd control as well, just like people are clustered up. He is just really good. Lasting Zone's a little bit of a meme. It's easily searched, as you can imagine. You're static for quite a bit of time, but it has good verticality, and it can, cut down people. Ultima, don't use. Same thing as Phoenix Ray. It's a meme. It's a meme factory. It just comes down to, do you like your teammates or not? Do you want them to be upset at you at the end of the game or not? It's just real, And then moving on, we have the sole reason I ever got involved with this game, Lightning. Claire Farron, wife-to-be. The Prada model herself. The only character to have a full trilogy. She is quite good in this game, but she is incredibly hard to use. I think even at her top, she doesn't go past B+. I think even in the best hands I've ever seen in the world, she is still a bit of a struggle bus. Now, Claire has two different forms, not unlike Yshtola. She has her Commando, which uses just strictly her sword, and then she has her Ravager form. Now, my understanding is in 012, the Ravager form was much better, but it's since been rebalanced for this game, and they kind of retooled it a couple of times, so now her Ravager form isn't nearly as impressive as it used to be. So let's start with Ravager. So with Ravager, this is just purely magic. Her ground magic really isn't that impressive. I really don't recommend using that outside of the start of the game or very specific setups, like you can do 3 fires, dash up, and HP attack, but it's fine. In the air, that's a completely different story. Her magic in the air is very potent. She has Arrow, which she can combo off of that, as well as it has really good tracking, and it'll just kind of leave them kind of sitting there for you to follow up quite good. And then her other main poking tool is her Air Thunder, which is her dash attack in the air. It's really good for verticality. It's good for just kind of poking people, knocking them away and stuff like that. But that's really what you want to use when it comes to neutral. Now, on the other side, we have Commando. Now, Commando, you hear me say this a lot. On PS4, I always had this feeling that I just could never hit anybody with lightning. I just always felt like that. They were always just out of range. On PC though, boy, that Commando is so good. It's very impressive. Her dash attack beatdown, it kind of juts out. It's not really momentum based like a lot of other dash attacks. It stops. Like when she does it, she stops moving. There's no other momentum that goes into it. But if you can hit somebody with that, it's a really good hold tool, but you can also cancel it into other bravery attacks. It's exceptionally good. She just has a lot of good options. I think that sometimes her attacks feel a little stubbier, but that can just be me. You really have to know and understand your ranges when it comes to lightning. If you are mashing or you are hitting attacks out of range, she's going to pay for it. Just be careful with that. And honestly, the thing that saves her and makes her a really good character, in my opinion, is going to be her EX skill. Like, her EX skill is referred to as Army of One. Very, very good attack. It is one of the triangles. It is an extended hold. But if you land this and they aren't blocking, it actually restores a little bit of your health. Nothing too crazy. But it's good to follow up on. It's a good setup tool for sure. And it's good to kind of catch people that are trying to run away. It's good for either one of those. So lightning, in a nutshell, I think is pretty good. As for HP attacks, her HP attacks, the best one is going to be Lightning Strike. This is one of the fastest HP attacks in the game. It does bravery damage. It has good verticality too. They try and double jump out of that, they will get clipped. Crushing blows are really terrific, 50-50 HP. If you just run up and then do crushing blow, they step, they're cooked. Thunderfall is really good. One of the better surges for melee. This is one of the off times that I will say, yeah, if you know what you're doing with Thunderfall, go ahead and use it because she has glide on it and does bravery damage. It's pretty good. Not a lot of range though. And then the last one's Razor Gale. You could use that, but I think that's really for intermediate low level stuff or very stage specific, but you can combo off it in the wall. It's okay. But yeah, in a nutshell, Claire is pretty good, but extremely difficult to use at the higher level. And there's no reason to use her versus other characters. She does not offer enough uniqueness to warrant her difficulty scale, which is unfortunate. And then moving on, we have Noctis. Now, Noctis is widely considered to be top 2 assassins in the game. Now, when he first launched, he was kind of weird. They buffed him a lot. He's got nothing but buffs, if I'm not mistaken. And the state he's in now is very, very strong. His unique EX skill is Warping, and it is pretty impressive, actually. He can get up to 3 stacks of it. He starts the match off with 1 stack. When he does Warping, he can actually charge it to increase the distance that he goes. But you got to be careful with that. If they see you warping and they call you out, they can definitely challenge you. Now, when he warps, if he immediately does an attack after warping, this is called Warp Critical. This gives him the same poise as a Vanguard, so no one can fuck with him. Nothing can contest it, except for another Vanguard, and you'll just trade. But other speeds, other marksmen, you are boned. You just got to take that. Now he can chain multiple warps into one. You can do 1, 2, and 3. Most hilarious thing you've ever seen in this game is Noctis that does triple warp and immediately gets HP. That's the fucking most hilarious shit ever. I think that overall he is just really good. He can force interactions like that. At the drop of a hat, he can go from 0 to 100 just because warp allows him to get in at any given time. They never know how long you're going to charge it. He can do like target switching to know, you know, is he warping to me? Is he warping to them? You just really never know. He has good normals. He has pretty decent attacks overall. He has a dunk. He has a good off me tool too. If somebody's trying to pressure him, he can do back brave on the ground. This is kind of knock people back. It won't win every interaction, but it's better than most speeds have, honestly. Yeah, I really like his kit. He is a character that does require some brain power. I don't think I don't really think he's really that beginner friendly, honestly. I think once you understand the mechanics, you will perform much better with him. His passive is Armiger. Once he loses, I think once he gets to like around 2,000 life or something like that, maybe 1,500, he gets Armiger, and it will do like additional attacks on all of his bravery attacks. So this is really good for extended holds as well. He can really cook with that. I think that Noctis is top 2 speeds in the game, honestly. Maybe top 3. There's a couple that are a bit more insane. His HP attacks is probably a bit of his downfall. His best one by far is Warp Strike. He actually completely leaves the arena while he's warping, like he can't hit. It goes further than you expect. It always goes further than you expect, honestly. You always kind of hit people that don't expect to get hit. Warp Strike is really good. Still Pirouette is good. It's a charge-based HP attack. Decent. Plunge is kind of memey, and then don't use Shooting Star. Don't be that guy. And then moving on, let's talk about the other character that does occupy the top 2 slots. That's going to be Kuja. Now, Kuja was a character I slept on for years. He just really wasn't my kind of playstyle. And then he also had that metal thong on. I was like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Why has he got a metal thong on? So I couldn't be caught dead using that character. But then, you know, I figured out he had an alt, so I started using that. He is very impressive. The main thing with Kuja is he, unlike any other melee character in the game, but definitely assassins, is that he glides on all his attacks. So gliding just means that he doesn't have to commit. He's not in a kind of, you know, stationary. He can glide left, right? You know what I mean? It's harder to punish him, and it's harder to get an idea where he's gonna kind of stop at. And this makes him extremely slippery. It's hard to kind of challenge him, to punish him and stuff like that, and his ranges are quite deceptive. In particular, his grounded forward brave, this attack goes way too far, has tremendous verticality. It is so good, and it wall rushes as well too. In the air is really where he shines though. He has his yoink move. If he's in the air above you, he does down brave. He will yoink you up. This is a really good hold, and this is good for trying to attack the enemy marksman. If they try and put up some type of projectile shield, he can just yoink them right out of it. It's like it never even happened. And in the air as well, he can yoink people above him. He just has a ton of really great tools, honestly. And one thing that really pushes him over the edge is his EX skill. So his EX skill, Discarnate Chorus, has 3 different levels. You know, it's a bit of a trend right there with that. At level 1 and 2, if he is near his allies, it will buff them and buff him as well. And then once he gets to level 3, he will transition into trance. Once he's in trance, he becomes quite good, honestly. They get like attack, defense, and movement buffs as well. And he just becomes insane, really, honestly. If he does die, it does reset, which is a bit of a bummer, but you can't have it all, honestly. Between his normals, his buff, his passive, it's just, this character is quite insane. It took me like 6 years to understand that, but I literally used this character for 2 weeks, went to a scrim, and literally I think we won like most of the matches, honestly. He is so damn good. Probably the only downside is that he only has 1 good HP, in my opinion, which is Symphonic Force. You really don't need anything but that. It's one of the fastest HPs in the game. It has anti-air properties. It's just so good. His other HP attacks I don't think are really good at all. Really don't bother using them. It's just good. He's also a character that would benefit with Shiva as well. And to round us out, we have the best assassin in the game, Jecht. Now, Jecht is pretty interesting. He is a character that kind of requires a very high level of raw skill. If you don't know how to play this game, or you don't have a good understanding of this game, you will fail a lot with Jecht. Jecht has no projectiles, but he is he's like the definition of just like, I'm gonna beat the brakes off you. That's what he does, honestly. He has some of the fastest normals in the game. He has good verticality. He has good strings. He has good holds. He has a lot of great things. I think the 2 things that really set him over the top, number 1 is Jecht block. He can block any incoming bravery attacks, and the more he does that, it affects his other EX skill. His EX skill is called Fake Out. So essentially what this means is that he can cancel any attack in his arsenal. This includes HP attacks. He can cancel the finishing frames of it. So unlike JDC, it instantly recovers almost. So if I do 1, 2, and then I do Fake Out, I can immediately do 1, 2 again, or I can do 1, 2, Fake Out, give you a second, and then attack you again. It's hard for people to react because they really don't know when you're going to use Fake Out. It can use to extend combo strings. It is just an incredible tool, and it makes him extremely versatile. But he can lose in the wrong hands because you need to know your ranges. You got to know how to pick your fights. But he is the other character like Squall that if he's in a marksman face, they ain't got nothing for him at all. There's nothing you can do against a good Jecht. He's going to maul you. He is just that good. And he also has some of the best HP attacks in the game. Triumphant Grasp, I think, is probably like top 5 HP attack in the game. It's a huge dunk, and it also has like a wave of aura after it, which also hits people. He has Hot Still, which even on PC is very hard to step. And then the one I personally like, but a lot of people don't like to use it, is Jecht Beam, which is a very fast, like bravery-based HP attack. It's pretty good. And then the one you should never use is Jecht Shot, where he throws a meteor. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. It's funny for memes, I guess, but like it's not viable competitively, I would say. So Jecht, I think him and Kuja have been tied forever for best speed. But at the highest level, I think Jecht wins just because he just has that raw aggression. Once he starts cooking, once he gets in your face and starts mauling you, in Japan, if you ever go to a tournament in Japan, you will see nothing but Jechts. He's that good. But the thing is the quality of the Jecht player. It requires very high player IQ. But you really need to know your shit. You need to have good awareness. You need to know when to commit, when not to commit, fake outs, everything. He is just has all the tools, but the thing that fails him the most is the players, unfortunately. And that'll do it for Assassins. Now, in a quick recap, Assassins, again, these are characters that need to be attacking the marksman, but safely. They're the ones that can kind of force a situation. They can dispel neutral, but you are also the one that's most likely to get collapsed on. So if you try and rush in without your team knowing what the hell you're doing, or they don't move in with you, you quickly will see 3 target lines and you're going to be in a bad situation. So you need to be able to go in, go out. You need to be very elusive, very slippery. You need to know your ranges, and you need to pick your attacks very, very closely. And that'll do it for assassins. Now moving on, we have specialists. Now specialists are kind of the jack of all trades. They don't really fit in any specific place. They can fill all 3 roles, but as we'll talk about here in a second, some are much more attuned to different play styles than other. So let's start at the bottom. And honestly, these aren't going to be ranked hardest to easiest to hardest. They're all kind of hard to use. At the highest level, these characters, none of them are easy in my opinion. So let's start with the grenade himself, Vaan. Now, Vaan, in my opinion, is one of the worst Final Fantasy protagonists of all time. But in this game, he's very, very interesting. They gave him that little stupid hunched over animation. All right, let me be serious. His playstyle is very interesting. This guy is a grenade. He's either going to blow up your team or he's going to blow up the enemy team. That's pretty much all there is to it. He is the only character in the game that is allowed to bring 2 different HP attacks into the battle at each time. I think he has 6 or 7 actual HP attacks. Most characters have 4. I think he has 6 or even 7. He has a ton of them. So he has more versatility on the HP front. But honestly, this gimmick is so strong that it defines his entire playstyle. His bravery attacks really are not much to write home about. He has very limited holds. He doesn't really, his bravery attacks really don't do that much damage. Now, his bravery projectiles are okay. On the ground, his bravery lightning, which is back brave, it actually has pretty good tracking, goes in the air as well. It's a good interrupt tool. But one thing I find is that that players try and rely on this a little bit too much and they get away from what Vaan is truly good at. What Vaan is truly good at is pushing the envelope. He's best played in the speed role as an assassin. His preferred HP kit is Azure Earthen, which I believe is the fastest HP attack in the game, as well as Earthen Eruption. Earthen Eruption is a bravery counter, which is very good. So you have the fastest HP attack and one of the fastest counters in the game. So at any given time, you can force a 50-50. If somebody swings at you, you can parry it. If somebody tries to dodge, you can HP them. It's a really simple HP RPS. It's really easy to initiate that. But the thing is that you have to make a lot of good guesses. You have to really build those HP attacks, those downs over and over again. And Vaan's special mechanic is quickening. So every time he lands an HP attack, it builds towards a quickening meter, which you can't see is invisible. But essentially, the more you add it, the more bravery damage you will be doing. So what you'll start seeing is that with every HP that you land, you'll start doing more bravery attacks. And once it gets higher and higher, once he starts glowing like white, you're doing a ton of bravery damage with every HP attack, like an insane amount. And if you get Black Hole, which I think you need to land 6 or even 7 HPs, a lot of them, you are doing an ungodly amount of bravery attack on every single attack. I think every single time you do land at HP, it's going to be close to 2k, if not maybe a bit more, because you start at 1k. So you're doing almost a k every single time in bravery attacks damage for each HP attack. It is incredibly good. I don't really think that Vaan is a good character. I think he is a high skill ceiling character, and I think a lot of people play him incorrectly, honestly. The best Vaans, and that's another character that Japan actually likes a lot too, just because he can force a situation, not unlike Jecht. If you aren't really playing him with Azure Earthen and you're trying to use some of his other HP attacks, they are not that good, actually. I think that they are very super situational, and most of them are extremely punishable. Things like trying to use White Whirl or Calamitous Orb. They have a ton of startup. You can get searched really quite easily. And even Pyroclasm leaves you punishable. Against aware people, it's not going to really work. Against lower level players, you can probably get that shit off a lot, but that doesn't make the character good. It makes the players you're playing against bad, in my opinion. And that's really all there is to Vaan. His unique EX skill is called Dreadnought. So if you press and hold down triangle, you can sit there and just build Brave. He will just keep stacking Brave until he hits 9999. Now, once he lets go of triangle, it locks that in for a set period of time. So every single time he lands that, it's always going to do that amount of bravery. It does not going to reset down to 0. So a lot of people don't tend to use this a lot. One cool strategy I did see was somebody got his brave up to like 6k, and then he just share bravery, so he get his team members killing. Pretty cool strategy. There's a lot of like theoretical stuff you can do with Vaan, but I don't think he's really good. I think that you have to play extraordinarily well, and you could just honestly just pick an assassin and probably get more work done, honestly. The thing I really don't like about Vaan is his holds are ass. He does not work well as a team member. He's very selfish, not unlike Sephiroth. So that's it for him. Moving on, we have Xdeath. Now, Xdeath, this is a character I fell in love with about 3 years ago. He is so damn good, but he has got a lot going on. To start with, his holds are pretty good. His 1-2 on the ground and in the air are really good. Really good setup tools. He has good projectiles as well. The orb in the air is good, as well as Rapukin is really good. Is like ridiculous good neutral tools. They are static, so you could be searched, so be careful with that. His forward brave in the air is really good as well, causes a wall crush. And then his dash attack actually teleports him around, and that does also have, depending on what form he has, it can have Vanguard priority, so be careful with that. So the 3 forms that Xdeath can switch between are called Berserker mode, Nullifier, and Hexer mode. So Berserker essentially allows you to be like a pseudo Vanguard. It allows you to like increase wall rush, and you can actually contest other Vanguards and stuff like that. It's pretty good. He only has to press a button to go into it. It's pretty good. Now, once your EX skill is fully leveled up, you can press triangle and do Black Hole. Now, Black Hole will automatically sap the bravery. It's like almost Doom, actually. It'll sap their bravery down to 0 until they hit you. So it's really, really good. Up next, we have Nullifier. Nullifier is okay. It's not that great. I don't really use it too much. Once you are in this mode, it increases the cooldown of all your EX skills by 1.25 times. It's alright. Now, one of the big things for this is the EX skill that you get, Power of the Void. So Power of the Void locks out any EX skills, so you would like to try and use this during summon. So if you do Power of the Void, nobody can teleport, no one can use their EXs. So if you're trying to chase out a Marksman for some insane reason, you can use that. They can't teleport, they gotta kind of eat it. And then the last one is Hexer. I think it's pretty good. So the way that Hexer works is the last hit of your bravery attack will apply the curse debuff against any of your opponents. It's not like game changing or anything like that, but White Dwarf really is good. So if you do White Dwarf, you press triangle, this will allow you to be able to blight people, and blight will pretty much like cripple them. They'll have like decreased movement speed and all that. It makes them easier to chase down. It just really hinders the opponents. Xdeath is that guy. I think he's really, really strong. Kind of a slept on character, honestly. A lot of people, you ask him who the best characters are, he might not even come up, but in the right hands, he's terrific. His best HP attack by far is Delta Attack. It's one of the best HPs in the game. It has an extraordinarily long distance for some reason. It can be charged. It's a 50-50 attack. There really is no reason to use anything but that. And all my guess is pretty good. It's like an AoE around you. If somebody's trying to dash up to you, you can just do that. It's pretty good. Now, if you hold it, it does like do Sloga, which is completely useless. Don't ever use that if you're trying to be serious, honestly. His search HP is Maelstrom. Not good. Don't use it. You can't use it. I feel the same. You know, if a search isn't good and the character is better off using something else, I'm going to flat out tell you not to use that. I don't think there's a world where you playing offensively with Delta Attack is going to be worse than you trying to play shoot with Maelstrom. Maelstrom's not a good HP in my opinion. And he's better off being in the fray, honestly. And then you have Omni Block. Omni Block is pretty hilarious. It blocks HP as well as bravery attacks the longer it gets to different levels. It's really hard to counter it perfectly. In the right hands, it can become quite annoying, but I think that's an expert level, honestly. Expert level HP attack. You got to know what the hell you're doing, honestly. So Xdeath, I would say this should probably be one of the last characters you learn, just because there's a lot going on. But once you get a hang of him, he is so rewarding. He's very good. And now we have the most rebalanced character in the entire game, Ramza. Ramza, the hero of Final Fantasy Tactics, one of the best, probably the best Final Fantasy of all time. They have no idea what to do with this character. They never had an idea. This character has been completely retooled like 4 different times. First, he was too strong. His focus was too strong. Let's start with that because that's his main mechanic. His EX skill is Shout. So when you start to match off, you'll notice that he looks normal, just like everybody else. If you press and hold the triangle button, this will charge his shout gauge. Once he shouts, this makes him a Super Saiyan, essentially. It makes him a god. And then he becomes one of the best characters in the game. He can contest Vanguards. You can't really run away from him. His entire bravery kit upgrades. Once you build up your entire meter, you can also use Galvanize. Galvanize will do like bravery buff for your teammates passively. It's okay. They nerfed it so much that it's not really worth using anymore. But back to Shout. Once you are in Shout, you will notice that there is essentially a gauge where it kind of ticks down. And there's no real way to refill it until you stop and recharge Shout. So as you can imagine, this makes his character very uneven. Once he's good, but it's always coming, where you have to stop and then recharge. And you can only ever keep one stock of charge there anyway. So once you burn that, you got to stop and recharge anyway. So when you have Shout, your normal attacks, you have great holds, you have great projectiles, you're him. You know what I mean? Dick's so big, it's crazy. Like you are HIM. There's nothing else. There's no other character that can fuck with you. But all they really have to do is wait you out. At a certain point, you're going to stop being him. You're going to get laid off from work. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your girl. And that's it. You know what I mean? You're done. But anyway, Ramza is very interesting because he doesn't really have a role. He's not really good on speed because at some point, again, he has to stop and charge. So you cannot be a consistent speed if you have to keep stopping and charging. I like him personally as a pseudo marksman. He has one of the best searches in the game, Holy. I love the animation for it, but it has a tremendous hitbox, and you will hit more than one people a lot of times, and it has a decent range. They did nerf it. It used to be like damn near like 4 rings, but now it's been nerfed, so it's not as good. And then that allows you to be in the back, which allows you to shout, charge and stuff like that safely. He does also have one of the better waves in the game, Earth Render, pretty good, but I'm not really a wave kind of guy just because they're so punishable. And then his melee attacks are okay. He has Innervate, which is a 3-hit attack, which does apply debuffs. And if he whiffs the first one, it no longer goes through, so he can kind of whiff that safely. And the last one is Cheery Ardyn, which is like a bubble HP attack. Use at your own peril, honestly. I would only recommend using it on small stages. But the thing with Ramza is when he's hot, and when he's not, he's not. That's all there is to him. I recommend probably using him as a Vanguard, if your marksman can keep you safe while you try and shout. Or the other thing I'd recommend doing with him is pseudo shoot with Holy. That's really the only 2 things. I would not recommend him on speed at all, unless you're trying to use a tower comp. You know what I mean? Where you're playing extreme neutral with like a Golbez and a Emperor or something crazy like that. That's the only thing I would recommend. And then moving on, we have one of the later additions to the game, Gabranth. Now, Gabby is very interesting. He has more EX skills than anybody else in the game. And on top of that, his kit is pretty good. His bravery attacks are very strong. He has verticality, going down and going up. He has a parry in the air. He has decent projectiles. His dash attack on the ground is pretty good. The tornado, I don't think is that super good. It's okay. But the real thing that separates him from the pack is his air dash attack, the boomerang. This attack right here is crazy. It's incredible for holds. It has a deceptive range. It will always hit people when they don't think it will. And it's good to combo off of. He has a lot of good things going for him. Now, his EX skills are predicated around 2 different things. One is being more of a team player, like the buffs that he has is being more of a team player, and the other one is pure aggression. So one will allow you to be more offensive, one will allow you to be more defensive. The breakdowns and stuff like that will be in the attached document, but suffice it to say, he has one of the most annoying HP attacks in the game. Enrage plus, once he's in his aggressive state, it is really good. This is probably one of the hardest HP attacks to actually interrupt because he moves so far so fast. You have to really time the search really good, or you have to have a really wide search or a wave. His other HP attacks are equally as good. Innocence is ridiculous. You can charge it as well. Guilt is one of the better HPs in the game. It's really fast, and you can charge it in his plus version. This guy he's him. He has a lot of stuff. He's kind of understated because he's a specialist, and the Vanguards run amok in this game after the buffs, especially like Snow and Ardyn. Those are bad matchups for him because they can beat him. You know what I mean? They can literally out-aggress him at some point. I think he has a lot. He's a really, really good character. Do not sleep on him. I put him like mid-high when it comes to both his skill as well as how hard it is to use him, honestly. And now we have probably my favorite melee outside of Sephiroth, Bartz, the hero of Final Fantasy V. This character is so fucking fun. I love using this character, but he's probably the most difficult character to use in the game for one main reason: inconsistency. It is really hard to consistently perform with this character. And it's weird because he has all the tools in order for you to be able to perform with this character. But it's just how you use those tools, when you use those tools, and your decision making. That makes all the difference with Bartz. Bartz is a bit like, I feel like Dante from Marvel 3. He has a million different tools, but some of them are just super situational. So to start with, when it comes to Bartz, his main thing is, if you ever play Final Fantasy V, you know that it's predicated off the job system. And they also transition that into this game. So the thing with Bartz is that he starts with all his jobs unmastered. You know what I mean? Just like a 16-year-old going to McDonald's for the first time to work the night shift. You don't, you know what I mean? You have no experience. You can build experience by either whiffing attacks, and this gives you, there's a hidden point value. You can whiff the attack, I think like 6 times, and this allows you to build 1 point towards it, and then you only need to land and attack the full bravery sequence 1 time, and it'll become mastered. Once it's mastered, he has some of the best attacks in the game. But once they're unmastered, his attacks are pretty ass, honestly. The unmastered attacks, like the standard versions of attacks that are worth using, are things like Dragoon. Dragoon and Black Mage are 2 of the more distinct attacks that he has. One of the better Bartz of all time, there's a Japanese player called Bartz level 99. And funny enough, in the anniversary tournament, he didn't use Bartz. That shows you. There's a guy that's named Bartz level 99 that didn't use Bartz in a tournament. It shows you how unreliable he can be. He used X-Death, I think, or something like that. He actually said that if you aren't using Dragoon and you're not using Black Mage, then just pick a different character. Because those are the 2 attacks that really distinguish him outside of the rest of the cast. So Dragoon is one of the best anti-airs in the game. It literally jumps into the air and he drags the opponent down with a lance. You would think a character like Kain, being a Dragoon in the game, would have an attack like that, but he does not. Bartz gets that privilege. It is really good, and you can actually set up like inescapable routes if you do it correctly. It's really good. But if you whiff it, it has a ton of recovery. It is incredibly good. And then Black Mage is a search bravery attack. Once at level 1, it's okay, but if you land it twice and it becomes mastered, it becomes a 3-hit search bravery attack that you can glide with. So it's pretty safe to do as well. The character just becomes, the more jobs you master, the more absurd he becomes. The jobs I recommend mastering first are Ranger, which is an arrow attack in the air. This will allow you to have better neutral. It's a good poking tool. It has better range. It can be charged. Be careful with charging it though. You're static while you do it, but it does go pretty far and hits for a lot of damage. And then the other attack that you really want to try and master is going to be Mystic Knight. So Mystic Knight, when it's unmastered, is one of the worst attacks in the game. It has very stubby range. It's like a speed, and it's just hard to hit people with it. You gotta be right on top of them to hit it. Now, when it's to get leveled up, it becomes ridiculous. Like, it has ridiculous like verticality, good horizontal range. You will clip people from so far away from it. It is one of the best attacks in the game, but it's kind of hard to level up unless you do those whiffs beforehand, honestly. And then outside of that, Blue Mage is good if you're trying to play speed Bartz, which you can play speed Bartz, but yeah, I think that's actually his best role, honestly. If you do Blue Mage, this will allow you to kind of close the gap on enemy Marksmen, and once it's fully leveled up, it will hold for quite a long time. His dash attack in the air is Ninja. Once he levels that up, it becomes fully invincible. Anything they throw at you, you will just plow right through it. It is ridiculous. The rest of his attacks are just really good. His HP kit, I think, is one of the best in the game, honestly. Everything is really good. Samurai is hilarious. It's a charge HP attack, so you can just dash up to somebody, start charging it, and wait for them to step and punish it. Dancer is really only usable on PC, honestly. It's a bit like Omni Slash. Once it's leveled up, it's uninterruptible. He's going to get off all the attacks, but then that makes you a bit more vulnerable. Your teammates need to look out for you if you're going to do the whole thing. Once it's unmastered, it's pretty quick, but you'll get weird rollback with that on PS4. It's just, I don't know what it is. It just happens. Geomancer is one of the best searches in the game. It's up there with Holy. I think it's good. Once it's unmastered, it does 1 pillar into the sky, Once it's mastered, it does continuous pillars, and having that active hitbox on the field is fucking hilarious. People get hit by it all the time. And then the last one, if you just want to be a real dickhead, is Knight. Knight is for assholes only. I think it's the best way to put it. It parries all bravery attacks, but once it gets mastered, you can parry bravery and HP attacks. So every single attack that's thrown at you in this game, you can parry it. So the only way to really beat that is team play. You have to wait for him to whiff it, try and bait it out, then punish him. But it has really fast startup, so you can whiff it and then whiff it again really quickly. This is fucking stupid. That's like expert level stuff. It's a little more difficult to execute than you might think. But Bartz is a really, really good character, but really hard to be consistent with. Like, even our best Bartz player, I've seen them switch off. In clutch situations, people seem to switch off Bartz, which is fine. I've played Bartz in tournament many times, and I always kind of regret it. It's just hard for you to guarantee you're going to be what you need to be for your team. And I don't care how good you are. It's hard, honestly. And that's all there is to him. Really fun character, though. If you can get it rolling, he's that guy. And then next, moving on, we have Camelot, a character I did not hear about until he was announced in this game. Apparently the antagonist of FF11. This character is a poor man's Bartz, honestly. He's like not even a worse version of Bartz. He's like an incomplete version of Bartz. Camelot's entire gimmick is that he has like Mystic Knight type things. All of his sword attacks are like Terrification, Earth. He uses the elements and stuff like that, essentially like a Mystic Knight. But when he starts to match, all of them are just like Bartz, are in a unmastered version, if that's what you want to call them. Once he successfully lands it, he gets the upgraded version of it. But unlike Bartz, where Bartz gets to keep it for the remainder of the match, once he masters it, he, for some fucking insane reason, has a timer. He has a timer that he has for each single time that he learned something, right? He masters it, and then the timer goes out. And then once the timer goes out, he has to do it again in order to get it. So it's a character that I don't think they really thought out his gimmick properly. He should actually be able to just keep it after he learns it. He wouldn't even be broken if all of them are mastered. His best attack is probably Air Forward Brave in the air. It's pretty good hold. I'd probably recommend learning that first. His projectiles are pretty good too, especially once they're leveled up. But his main gimmick is his EX skill. And what it allows him to do is put these massive orbs on the field. But they are kind of really particular, like set play type things. What it does is if you get hit by it, it slows you down. It makes it harder for you to run away. Essentially think of like Genova or Blight or something like that. And it's easier for them to set play. And he can also do this to people that are down. So if he downs you and then you're trying to get up, he can do that orb right on top of you, which I've seen people get out of it anyway. You know what I mean? It does make you slower and stuff like that. The gimmick isn't strong enough to supplant the rest of his skills, in my opinion. He's still not nearly as strong as he needs to be, and he doesn't fill a role really well. He can't really approach the actual marksman unless he has stuff mastered, and then he doesn't really have a lot of things to plow through magic either. He has too many problems, man, and I like him. I think he's pretty cool, but he has a lot of problems, and he can't be a Vanguard because he loses to pretty much every Vanguard. Even the bad ones, he has nothing for them at all. Like, they can literally just punch him. Like, he can't do anything, honestly. Unless he has Intervene. Intervene is a counter-based HP attack. Yeah, he doesn't have much for him. He is a character that desperately needed one more look at on the balance scale, but he ends up being one of the worst characters in the game. Probably down there with Sephiroth and Firion. But, yeah, it's satisfying, I guess, when you win with him. He has cool outfits. Even though he does have a trash can. I mean, it's all good. He's all right. And then we have one of the final characters in the game, Xenos. Now, Xenos is a pretty interesting character. Now, some of these characters on here, what they try to do is they try to fill out the specialist role. They try to, like, make it so that there's more specialists in the games. But some of these characters really should have just been Vanguards, honestly. And Xenos is definitely, like, the epitome of that. Xenos has a lot of really interesting tools. Xenos has 3 different arts that he can use. He has Art of the Swell, Art of the Storm, and Art of the Sword. Now, these are 3 different attacks. All 3 of them are unblockable. One is a very close hitting attack. One lunges him forward. And then the other one is a vertical dropping, kind of a dunk attack. All 3 of these are unblockable. You cannot get out of it. The thing with that is that one thing I've always kind of noticed is that he has to press triangle, then he has to pick a direction in order to do it. I feel like that animation should be a bit faster, but it's okay. It's a good way to kind of reset people. If you are in a 1v1 with a competent Xenos, it can be kind of terrifying because you have to factor in that this man has 3 unblockable attacks at any given time, and you might just pick the one that you weren't ready for and you're bodied. Once he lands all 3 of them, he essentially has the ability to transcend. They did give him a buff, so once he has his red aura around him, this cloak, he now has the jumps of a speed of an assassin. He has a Vanguard poise, and he can also pull off his EX skill, which is we just call it transcend. It pretty much is a uninterruptible attack. He does all these animations and stuff like that. You can't interrupt it, and then it's a really good happy birthday machine. People try and dash into it to interrupt it, and then just get warped into it and they die. It's really good, but I don't honestly think that his sends are strong enough to carry an entire character. It makes him extremely good offensively, but his problem is that he still loses Vanguards. Vanguards don't give a fuck about anything that I just said. They don't care about any of that because he can't interrupt them until he has all 3 sends. So what's he gonna? He has to press square every single time. And his HP attacks are really good. A moving Troika I think is pretty good. Good for step hunts as well as building brave. And then he also has Lightly Spark, which is pretty good, but if you double jump over, it's kind of useless. It is a charge-based one. Now, he does have a pretty decent wave Vayne splitter. I don't think it's that... I like the animation on it, but I don't think it's that great. And if you're in the air, it actually becomes a search, which is kind of weird, but it's whatever. So, Xenos is in a pretty interesting place. He can hold, you know what I mean? He has good holds, he has good attacks, decent projectiles, but I think that others do his job better than he ever will. Vanguards just do his job better. There's not one thing that he does better than actual Vanguards. And that's going to be the role that you kind of want to put him in as Vanguard. Because I don't think his skill set is really that attuned for Marksmen. I think that he can get shut out by Marksmen pretty easily. Like, I think there's been like one Xenos I've ever fought that was like, holy shit, I can't get away from the Xenos. And that was because he used his sins all at the right time. He used the right ones in the right sequence. But he can get shut out pretty quickly, I think. His moves that he needs to get through magic are pretty predictable. So you just got to be careful with that. So I think that puts him on Vanguard. And I think he loses to pretty much every Vanguard until he gets his buffs. Once he gets his buff, he can definitely compete, but it's limited. You have a countdown timer, you know, that you have to make it happen before the buff runs out. And that's just, it's whatever. I don't think he's a bad character. I think that if you excel in like actually mixing people up and making people guess, you can definitely cook on Xenos, but I don't think he'll ever be truly top tier, honestly. And actually, we had a character that I forgot because this character is just whatever. We have Onion Knight. Now, Onion Knight is a pretty interesting character. This is a character that's been rebalanced quite a bit, just like Ramza. Now, Onion Knight operates off of unique EX skill, essentially allowing him to pick between 2 jobs. Which way, Western man? You can either be a ninja or you can be a sage. Now, when you're in your base form, you, like Bartz, you have to kind of build towards getting that job. I think you have to land like 3 attacks or something like that in order to be able to switch jobs, but it's pretty easy. You can like land projectiles or go in and do like a quick sequence. The preferred route for him is going to be Sage. That's the most viable option for him, and it seems like the developers knew that too. So once he's in Sage mode, essentially become a marksman. You become a very good marksman. All his attacks are pretty competent. He has Search Braves. Really, the only attack you need to use is Grounded Ford Brave. This green arrow ball is ridiculous. It's like Ace's Ford Brave, but on crack. He has Glide. It's faster. It's just so damn good. And then once he's in Sage mode, his Meteor gets additional range. And then he can use Tornado as well. Tornado is like a double search. It is not quite as broken as Swim Meteor, but is really good. And you'll catch a lot of people on that second burst as well. He has good defense. He can cook really on Sage. Now in Ninja, I'll be honest with you. I don't really play much Ninja mode Onion Knight, but he has some tools too. But I think he falls in the same category of, why wouldn't you just pick a speed? You know what I mean? Because every time Onion Knight dies, it resets. He has to get the job again. So that's a huge liability, right? Especially if he's your marksman. Imagine your marksman dying, and then you don't got a marksman no more. He's got to go to the unemployment office and get a job slip. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. So that's one reason I don't like him, is that he has to reset his job every time he dies. And then Ninja, I don't think is super good. Ninja has some shit, you know, it has some tools. You can definitely do your job quite well, but it's just like, why not just pick a speed, honestly? And he's okay. He's competent. I don't think he's whatever. Now that we discussed the entire cast at length, let's talk about some EX skills. Each character is allowed to bring 2 EX skills into each battle. These are skills that allow a variety of different effects. Unfortunately, the vast majority of them are only viable in very specific use cases, so I'll go over which are commonly used and why. So, as we discussed, during the character portion and stuff like that, each role has very specific EX skills you want to use. To start with, I would say for speeds, let's start with them. You want to use Ren Shield as well as HP regen. Ren Shield you can swap out for something like Enfeeble. I think those two are quite good. Enfeeble, I'm a Enfeeble apologist. Enfeeble used to be incredibly broken, but they've adjusted it and the meta's kind of moved away from it. But the thing I like about Enfeeble is that there is no counterplay to that. If you get Enfeebled, you're beat. You can't dash. You're trapped. So I think it's better than people give it credit for. What Ren Shield does essentially is allow you take double damage almost, or like at 1.5 damage. It's pretty good as well. I think those are probably the two that I would recommend when it comes to being an assassin. For Marksman, the one that I would recommend is going to be whatever you pick, just make sure you have Teleport. Teleport is a necessity when it comes to being a Marksman. If you do not pick Teleport, you are actively throwing. The reason that you want to have Teleport is that you cannot mash as a Marksman. There's nothing you can do to mash. So if you are cornered and you're in a desperate situation, your teammates are relying on you to be able to bail yourself out at least once. You know what I mean? Safely, especially during the summon if they decide to chase you, because you don't have that great of defensive options. Outside of Teleport, the other thing that you probably want is either Brave Conduit, which is good. It allows you to get breaks from a far range away, or you can do Mighty Strikes, which will give you additional damage for a set period of time. Now, we have to have the Bainga conversation. Now, Bainga is something I really dislike in this game. I think it is a hell of a crutch. It's pretty good, and you never hear me saying it's not good, but it is a hell of a crutch. I think that players use it incorrectly. And against proper players, it's going to cost you because you're going to be relying on something that's easily avoidable, easily punishable. What Bainga does is throw out a HP poised projectile, essentially, and it explodes. And anybody that gets caught in it gets binded. They can't move, they can't do anything, which, as you can imagine, is easy for HP confirms and stuff like that. It really lends it to bad defense. I find that the people that like to use this a lot, they really don't have good defense because they're relying on Bainga a lot. It's kind of like relying on Lariat in Marvel 3, honestly. If you rely on that all the time, and when you don't have it, you're pretty bad at defense all of a sudden, you know what I mean? So it's up to you. I don't personally like it. It has its use cases. I think it does make you worse, honestly. Those are probably the actual ones I would recommend for Marksman. And for Vanguard's EX skills, what I would recommend is Mighty Strikes and HP regen. One thing to note, please, always make sure you have 2 HP regens, no matter what. You need to have 2 HP regens on the team because this will allow you to recover more health. If you only have 1, I guarantee whatever other set that they're trying to pick, they have like double, I call them double negative. You have Ren Shield and Enfeeble. That's stupid. There's no reason for you to have that. You need to make sure that you have double HP regen so that you can actually kill your teammates. Anything else is considered somewhat selfish. The other thing you could use is Revivify, which helps with your dashing around and stuff like that. And you can also use things like Sloga, as well as Poisonga. They are like HP. They trade with HP, so they're really good. And if your Vanguard doesn't have a lot of actual projectiles, or they don't have a wave or anything like that, you can throw that out. That can prevent situations. It's really good. I think that those are also 2 pretty good viable EX skills. So EX skills are not really much to say about it. This is something that's this has been figured out since forever now, since the arcade. So we know which ones are good, which ones are bad. You can always experiment, but it's up to you. So moving on, let's talk about some basic principles when it comes to NT. Starting with basic teamwork principles. The bread and butter for any team is known as the setup. As I discussed a bit with some of the characters and stuff like that, this is a team-based game. Working together will always yield much better results than trying to go lone wolfing and stuff like that. One of the key things you can do is you can set up each other to land HP attacks by doing normally bravery sequences. If you are let's start with Vanguards. If you're a Vanguard, you normally want to do 2 attacks, and then this will allow for ample amount of hits done so that somebody else can follow up and do an HP attack safely. No one will get punished in most cases if done correctly. However, if it's a speed Their setups are a little different. Some of them are like character specific. Like I said with Locke, he has really good setups, Tidus as well, but most of them kind of have stubby normals. So you want to kind of look for a 1-2. So when it comes to a speed, you want to look for a 1-2, then you want to be pulling the trigger with that HP attack. Now, if you are finishing your strings a lot, that's what we call it. If you're doing the entire bravery sequence, you don't really want to be doing that. You want to make sure that you're only really doing 2 attacks for a number of different reasons. Number one, it's safer for you to only do 2 attacks. If you do all 3 attacks, you are leaving yourself open to punishment. Someone is going to notice that you keep doing that and they're going to start punishing you. You leave yourself completely vulnerable. The other thing is that you will hit, if they're blocking, you're going to hit them so far away, no one can confirm off of it. And sometimes you need to keep them close, especially if you're trying to, close out that stock. You don't want to be closing your string out unless you absolutely have to. Keep in mind, like I mentioned before, who your teammates are targeting, what kind of brave your teammates have. They have killing brave. You definitely want to make sure you're holding. There is something known as a rehold. So what you can do is if you do, say again, Vanguard, if you do 2 hits, the second player can come in and do their bravery sequence. And this will essentially allow the Vanguard to be able to perform their HP attack. So it's like setup, then setup. We just call them reholds. So this will allow them to cash out, say that the Vanguard is the one that has the HP, the high brave. It'll allow them to cash out. So that's one thing you definitely want to keep in mind as well. And moving on, I actually might move this into one of the earlier sections. Let's talk about awareness. Awareness is such a critical aspect of every inch of this game. It is crazy. Knowing where your teammates are, what's going on, what's on the field at any given time, this will increase your actual play level tenfold more than anything you could do. You know what I mean? You could do 100 scrims with the best players in the world, but if you have bad awareness or you're not improving your awareness, you are always going to be a liability. You got to know what's going on, when it's going on, you know what I mean? And then that will allow you to actively have enough information to make informed decisions. You can make the best decision. You're not always going to be able to make the best decision every time. You want to try and make sure you're making the best decision most of the time. No one's going to get it right 100% of the time, but that really is one of the things that, separates beginners from higher level players. And a lot of that, like I mentioned, comes down to reading the minimap. If you read the minimap and you know what's going on, where it's going on, this will give you so much information, you can make better decisions, and this will make you a better player. I guarantee it. One thing I want to talk about is team comps. Now you'll notice that in this game, the preferred team comp is 1 of each class, 1 specialist, 1 marksman, and 1 vanguard. If you are trying to run different comps, that's fine, but just be aware that the game was built from the ground up to really run in that fashion. You can do things, of course, like, run double speeds and 1 marksman, or double vanguard and 1 marksman, or, if you want to give up and just lose all hope, if the lights have left your eyes, then you can just do triple speed, which I honestly think is the ugliest thing in this game. That's for people that have just straight up flat out given up on trying to play and understand the game. It might work, but it's super duper ugly and it's whatever. But things like double vanguard can work now after the balance change, especially if you have an aggressive one like Snow or Ardyn or Sephiroth. You can definitely make something like that work. And then something like double speed is very tricky. One thing I find is that a lot of people don't like to play Vanguard. Oh, I don't want to babysit and stuff like that. Let me be very clear on this front. Even if there is not a Vanguard on the screen, it is still somebody's responsibility to protect the shoot. Just because one person picks speed and then the other person picks specialist, someone needs to be there supporting the shoot. I feel like no one will pick Vanguard and then they'll feel just like, it's not my, hands up in the air. It's not my problem. It's somebody's problem. All 3 of you are on the same team. Please don't be arrogant when it comes to that and selfish, because you're only hurting yourself and you're hurting your team. If you work together, you will get better results. You know what I mean? The other thing I want to talk about is like pseudo comps. Even if you don't want to run like a marksman or something like that, I always strongly recommend having at least 1 search HP on the field, just because searches are inherently broken in this game. And not having one is just putting yourself at an extreme detriment. If you only have line of sight or you only have up close melee attacks, you are hindering yourself, especially if the other team is playing a proper comp. And don't let it be a neutral based comp. You are going to get eaten alive. It's going to be very difficult for you. So yeah, back to our regularly scheduled programming. And another quick tip that I want to talk about, I wasn't really sure what to fold this into, is when you are targeting somebody, right, you will see that you are looking at them, right? Now, when you are attacking them, you can also look left, you can look right, you can look at the other different targets that you have. If you know that you're holding them, right, say you have Firion or Squall or something like that, they're going to be in an extended hold sequence. You can look at the other characters to see if you are safe. Especially, you want to make sure you're looking at the Marksmen. If you're doing something, if you're completing a string or something like that, you want to look at the Marksmen and make sure you're not going to get punished. If they are looking in another direction or they're already committed to an attack, you know you can finish that string safely. You know, you can get all that bravery in. That is a key thing as well. That's one thing you see a lot of players doing. If you ever jump in and spectate lobbies, you'll see, hey, I'm doing the Sephiroth string, but I'm also looking at this Gabranth that's right next to me. I'm going to see if he's going to punish me, or if he's going to try to HP me. It'll, again, give you more data to make informed decisions. That's another good hallmark of a really good player, so keep that in mind. Now, one thing I didn't really linger on too much, but this is a very important topic. Let's talk about static versus gliding moves. Static attacks are attacks that you do stationary. You are not moving in any capacity. As you can imagine, you become quite punishable, specifically for marksmen that have really good, have really fast HP attacks. They can punish static attacks. So if I know you're going to press that static attack, I'm going to be able to HP search you and down you. If you just become choreographed, if you're doing the same thing over and over again. Now, granted, this works much better with faster HP attacks like Trine, Thorns, that kind of thing, Ultima, but you can even do it with slow HP attacks as well. Now, on the other hand, attacks that have glide on it, it's very difficult to punish them. For melee basic characters, there's only like 2 characters that really have glide on anything. Kuja has glide on pretty much everything. This is why he's super spoiled. Ardyn has glide on his Dark Faraga, very situational. Most other characters do not have glide at all when it comes to melee. Glide is normally reserved specifically for marksmen. Most marksmen have glide on 90% of their attacks, which makes it harder to punish them because they're not static. This doesn't mean you can't punish them though. If you know that they're coming out of their glide, you can punish that. Pretty much anything is punishable via search if you time it correctly, but you have to, it's a commitment, it's a risk reward kind of thing. And if they know you're looking at them, they might, try and switch up their glide just a bit. Now, there are certain attacks that are very large, that have very large hitbox, and it's easier to hit a glide with. Stuff like Holy, with Ramza, Twin Meteor, Hell's Judgment, Geomancer, Spiritual Ray, things that have massive hitboxes. If somebody is trying to glide away, they are going to get clipped because it's the hitbox is so massive. Of course, it does depend on how you time it as well, but just be careful with static attacks because it is search fodder in the right hands. They're a way for you to try and do something where you're not moving, they're going to search you. Moving on, let's talk about communication. Now, you might wonder, how the hell do I tell my teammates what I have going on? Now, you can actually use a D-pad in order to use certain chat commands and stuff like that. You can preset these up in the lobby before you even join. And actually in the lobby, you can rearrange them. Really, the only ones that you really need to have down and you know how to navigate to them is I'm going for the core, and 2 is time to summon. If you only have those 2, you'll still be completely fine. There's a bunch of them that say, hey, I need help, or joking or laughing, the character lines. You really don't need those. The 2 that you really need is maybe even 3. Number 1, I'm going to get the core. That means I'm not going to be with you. I'm going to get the core. Normally used by the marksman. It's the marksman's responsibility to get the core. Number 2, hey, it's time to summon. Let's summon. It's very straightforward. And then maybe if you want to set up a third one, especially as a marksman, you might say, hey, I might need some help right here. There's normally one that says, hey, are you going to help me out or something like that? That might trigger your Vanguard to say, holy hell, I'm 3 rings away from my marksman. They're being harassed. What am I doing? So the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to ping spam. Sometimes people get triggered and they keep, saying the same voice line over and over again, which gets really fucking annoying. Do not be that guy. Don't ping spam. Don't be like BM ping spam. You're not 5. Come on. Just, be better than that. And this, I think, is going to be part 1 of a 2-part series. This is probably a long ass video. Probably, I want to say probably an hour. It's probably the longest we ever did, an hour or 2. But I hope you guys got some use out of it. This channel is going to be the hub for anything Dissidia NT related. I've already uploaded pretty much everything I've ever done related to NT is here. I might try and throw out another guide. We'll see what the reception is on this one. And I kind of freestyled a lot of this because I was playing this game so much. Some of it just didn't need to be written down. I just knew it already. But if you'd like to support me, make sure you give me a shout over on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I don't care what that guy says. And also subscribe to my main channel. I do like gaming videos, essays, that kind of thing, or hit me on Twitch. But outside of that, I appreciate you guys checking it out. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me in Discord. LC signing out. Peace.